After months of campaigning, it's decision day in Iowa.
And the Democrats' hopes of winning back the White House are on the line.
In the heartland right now, one state cast the first votes in an epic election.
It's time to decide. It's time to move.
The moment is here for Democrats to make up their minds.
Are you ready to send this presidency into the history books?
Trump will be defeated.
Beat Donald Trump. That is our job. And I got a plan for that.
Who has what it takes to take on Trump? It's Iowa's choice. Tonight, the kickoff contest of 2020.
Are you ready for caucus night?
And the field is wide open. Joe Biden arguing he's the most electable with a promise to restore America's soul.
We choose hope over fear. We choose truth over lies.
Bernie Sanders claiming he can energize voters with a promise to transform America.
Sorry, you ain't gonna buy this election.
The top candidates in a high-stakes battle over who can take back the White House.
Hello, Iowa City.
Elizabeth Warren offering a passion for big plans.
This is no time for small ideas. That's why I'm here.
Pete Buttigieg pledging a new generation of leadership.
We are the solution to the problems that we face.
Amy Klobuchar promoting Midwestern pragmatism and grit.
I have won every race, every place, every time. We want to win.
11 candidates in all, eager to challenge the president in the bitter aftermath of impeachment.
Enough is enough. We're gonna win.
Now, it's time for voters to have their say.
We know we need to turn the page.
We are going to shock the world. Am I right?
Iowa is the first stop on the road to the White House.
Let's get the hell up and take back this country.
There is nothing that can stop us.
And tonight will change the course of the 2020 campaign.
We want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world. I'm Wolf Blitzer in the CNN Election Center. We're counting down to the official start of the Iowa caucuses, the first crucial contest in the Democratic presidential race. 11 candidates are in the running for the party's 2020 nomination. But the battle for Iowa is expected to come down to this: 4 leading candidates, Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren, in a very close and suspenseful race, all of them focused on defeating one man, President Donald Trump. We're standing by for early results from what's known as satellite caucuses. They're being held in Iowa and at locations across the country and even around the world. Iowans who live out of state are getting a unique opportunity to participate. The next satellite caucus we're covering begins in St. Petersburg, Florida, in less than an hour. Others already are underway, including this satellite caucus in Port Charlotte, Florida. We have a live report soon on the results of that location. We have a team of correspondents inside caucus sites and at the candidates' headquarters as we begin our special coverage of this momentous day in Iowa. Right now, let's go to Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. They're in Des Moines for us. Guys, set the scene.
Well, it's great, Wolf, because right now we have absolutely no idea what's going to happen. The race is wide open. All 4 of the front runners that you mentioned there, Buttigieg, Warren, Sanders, Biden, all 4 of them have had moments where they were ascendant in the polls, especially here in Iowa. The polls have shown them all fairly close, neck and neck, within the margin of error in a lot of those polls. So really, anything could happen. We have no idea. Forget the pundits, forget the spin, forget what press secretaries say, forget the TV ads. It's all entirely left in the hands of the voters of Iowa, the Democratic voters of Iowa. And so for that reason alone, it's an exciting time. But also, Dana, one of the things that's going on that's so exciting is truly the Democratic Party, these Democratic voters here in Iowa and around the world, are going to be deciding the direction of the Democratic Party. Do they want to try to appeal to middle-of-the-road voters? Do they want to chart a more moderate path, like with Buttigieg or Biden or Klobuchar? Do they want to try something completely new, like Yang? Do they want to pursue a more progressive path? voters who don't naturally come out to vote, like Warren or Sanders. So really, it's so exciting for people like us because now it's up to the people who really matter, the voters.
It's true. And because caucuses are so different from all of the primaries we're going to see down the road, people are going to come together in their communities and form groups to decide which of those answers that they're going to give. It's first of all going to be the question of the ideology, the personality, the candidate, but then there are big changes this time around.
Oh, the rules, yeah.
And the rules. And I can tell you, I was traveling around Iowa over the past couple of days, yesterday in particular, talking to voters and even ran into some who are precinct captains, meaning they're the ones who are going to be in charge of trying to get the voters their way for their candidate. And there are a lot of people who are concerned that the voters aren't sure exactly, or the caucus goers aren't sure exactly how it's going to work, because in the past, you could really move around. This time around, you go to your candidate, you're locked in.
You're locked in.
You can't move.
Even if it's uncommitted.
Even if it's uncommitted, which is effectively a candidate, which we can talk about later.
Yeah.
And so that is a really, really big difference that these people who are in the caucuses are going to have to explain real time to make sure that people coming understand their first choice is likely going to be their only choice.
It's complicated, and we're going to try to make sure that everybody out there understands. But just to be candid, I understand it now after it's been explained to me, so it can't be too tough. Because if I get it, then I think the voters of Iowa are going to be fine. As caucus results start to come in, we're going to break them down for you in more than one way, in several ways, in fact. For the first time, Iowa Democrats are reporting the results of the popular vote in 2 different rounds, not just delegates, but the popular vote. In the first round, voters will get to declare their first choice candidate. In the final round, voters are allowed to switch their support if their first choice candidate doesn't arrive at least 15% in that caucus. It's called a viability threshold, but 15% is the percentage to get to. We're going to be able to compare both rounds to see how the vote changed and how that may have helped the ultimate winner of that individual caucus. Now, in the end, the winning candidate will be the one who gets the biggest share of Iowa delegates. State delegates are awarded based on the final round of votes, not the first one, but the final round. Again, the state delegates are what matter most. We're going to be watching them very, very closely all night long. And now we want to check in at a satellite caucus being held outside of Iowa. As Wolf mentioned earlier, registered Iowa Democratic voters who are out of state right now, maybe they're in college, maybe they have winter homes in Florida, whatever, they're getting the chance to take part in caucuses around the country and even around the world. Let's go to CNN's Rosa Flores. She's at a satellite caucus in Port Charlotte, Florida. Rosa, what's going on there?
You know, Jake, caucusing here has been going on for about 30 minutes. I want to show you around because you can see that there are different groups. This group right now that's raising their hands, those are the Amy Klobuchar voters. And what's happening right now is this is the first round. So as you were just explaining, they're trying to figure out if these candidates have viability. There are 134 Iowans caucusing here today. So that viability number, Jake, is 20. So what you're seeing is they're going around and counting each hand one by one to make sure that each of the candidates has viability. And then here to my left, you can see that this is the Pete Buttigieg crowd. So they're waiting. They're also filling out their presidential preference cards here, and they're counting them because that's another very important part of this year that's also new, is that there's going to be a paper trail that's going to be able to be counted. Now, as we walk over, you can see the Bernie Sanders camp is a little light on this side, and then you have Elizabeth Warren on the far side here as well. Now, they're also waiting because they're going to be counted as well. Now, we should point out that while you see a lot of activity here, this is not a barometer for the results that we're going to have this evening, Jake, but a lot going on, as you can see. And from talking to a lot of these folks, as you were mentioning, Jake, they're very excited to be able to caucus and participate, even though they're in Florida in February. Jake.
I know, it's a brand new thing. It's very exciting. And as Rosa just said, this is just one caucus site of more than 1,600, almost 1,700 total caucus sites. So what we see there, what happens after that first round of voting, is not necessarily indicative, but we're going to go back to that caucus site right after we squeeze in this quick break to find out the first actual votes. Stay with us.
Welcome back to our special coverage of the Iowa caucuses. For the first time, there are what are being called satellite caucuses outside of Iowa, around the country, and indeed even around the world. Let's go to Paris, France right now, where they're just wrapping up the Iowa caucuses there. Melissa Bell is on the scene. Melissa?
Well, for a long way from Iowa now, it is the first time that registered Iowan Democrats have been able to come and vote overseas. 3 cities, Tbilisi, Glasgow, and here in the French capital. And what you're going to see in this room, where they've just finished out that second round of voting, the realignment, is really the same thing you're going to see throughout those satellite caucuses, both domestically and, of course, in Iowa itself. The names, the candidates up on the wall, those voting cards, that paper trail that Rosa was just talking about a moment ago. Everyone who came in here, 17 registered Democrats, in the end turned out to vote here in Paris, and it is not necessarily a representative sample, Wolf, nor is it tremendously large. What is interesting about it is that it gives us an early idea of how people in Paris, how Iowan Democrats here in Paris voted. Simply because of the time difference, we have an idea of what's happened here. Again, out of 17 registered voters, we are not talking about huge numbers. Just over 41% for Elizabeth Warren. This is the first round of voting. CNN estimates Bernie Sanders 29.4%, Amy Klobuchar 17.6%, Pete Buttigieg 11.8%. Now, what that meant was that he was not a viable candidate, and the people who chosen him had to then redistribute. We've now had that second round of voting come in, so we now have those final estimates here in the Paris caucus. They've come in at 47% for Elizabeth Warren, 35% for Bernie Sanders, and 17% for Amy Klobuchar. Again, not a representative sample, but interesting to see who's come out to vote. Of these 17 Iowan Democrats, lots of young people, several first-time voters, and I think this is really interesting, Wolf. One of the groups that turned out, we counted at least 4 Republican voters who've attended an Iowan Democratic caucus for the first time.
Yeah, they can register on the same day. All right, Melissa Bell in Paris, thank you very much. Rosa Flores is in Port Charlotte, Florida, along the Gulf Coast, not too far from Fort Myers. What are you seeing over there, Rosa?
Wolf, a lot of excitement. You can see around the room, a lot of claps, a lot of smiles. People very excited to be here in Port Charlotte. What's going on right now is the first round of caucusing. There are 134 Iowans in this room, and they are about to announce the results of the first round. But let me give you a quick look. You can see that the different groups are caucusing together, and I am going to try to walk to the back of the room, Wolf, so that we don't interrupt the proceedings.
And also by counting cards. Okay, so here's what I've got. Bennett, 0. Biden, 33. Bloomberg, 0. Buttigieg, 38. Delaney, 0. Gabbard, 0. Klobuchar, 48. Sanders, 1. Steyer, 2. Warren, 12. Yang, 1. And I don't have uncommitted yet.
Were there any uncommitted? Oh, in the hall.
Okay. Okay, so...
Wait, Sue. Were you uncommitted back there?
There was...
No, I don't think we did have it.
Okay, so right now I have 0 uncommitted. Does that reflect?
What's the total now?
Okay, so I have 135 cards completed.
Out of 150.
And I had 100... What's this? Registered. I had 134 people who signed in. And I have 135. Okay.
Well, we'll just check the cards before we send them on.
Yeah, I'll check the cards. Honestly, there were a couple of you that kind of did a 3-stroke signature, and it was kind of hard to tell if it was a signature or a or the tail end of the previous signature. So I will check those numbers one more time.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, the numbers that I have, I'll skip the zeros. Biden 33, Buttigieg 38. 37. No, he's got 38 cards. We verified that. The 38th was mine. Klobuchar was 48. Sanders 1. Steyer 2. Warren 12. Yang 1. And uncommitted 0. Okay?
Did you say Biden 33?
I said Biden 33, yes.
Okay. So, what we need to do now is the people, what is viability?
So of 134, 20 is viable.
Yeah.
So the groups that are smaller, and I think they know who they are, need to realign, but that's Yang, Warren, Steyers, Sanders. Your groups are not viable, so we would invite you to find another candidate whose views you can support.
Okay.
Amy!
Wait. Okay.
Just to have it said.
Okay. Okay, I've been asked to identify the groups that are viable. The groups that are viable are...
Hey, Wolf, just to explain what's going on right now, this is the first round of caucusing, and with 135 people in the room, that means that each candidate needs at least 20 voters for them to be viable, for them to reach that 15% threshold. So far, Klobuchar, Biden, and Buttigieg have viability, but Yang, Sanders, Steyer, and Warren do not. And so what the organizers are asking those voters to do is for them to find a viable group and join them at that time. And then that starts the second round of caucusing, which is what is about to start right now. And what you'll see is probably a lot of discussion among the people here in the room so that they can do what Iowans do when they caucus.
Rosa, hold on for a moment.
Talk to their neighbors,
Rosa,
talk to their friends.
I just want to show our viewers the results that we're getting right now that you can see, and they're on the screen right now. Right now, this is in Port Charlotte, Florida, 35.6%. First round of voting in this caucus in Port Charlotte, Florida. Klobuchar, 35.6%. Buttigieg, 28.1%. Biden, 24.4%. Elizabeth Warren, 8.9%. Tom Steyer, 1.5%. So now there's going to be a second round of voting because some of the candidates were not, quote, viable. We're going to have those results as soon as we come back.
You are looking at a satellite caucus that is in Port Charlotte, Florida. They've already taken one vote. Now they are going to be voting again shortly. We're going to go back to there in a moment here in Washington with our panel. Bakari Sellers, what are your expectations for today? I mean, what are you kind of going to be watching over the next, I don't know,
well, I think
15 hours?
We would all agree that the expectation is no one knows what's going to happen tonight. Absolutely no one knows what the results are going to be. I am watching tonight. Of course, you have Barack Obama's vice president and Joe Biden. You have Pete Buttigieg, who is the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, a city of 100,000 people on the biggest stage in Democratic politics. If you caucus for him or vote for him or not, that's a big night. Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar carrying the banner for those individuals like myself who were championing and wanting a female president. And so you just have all of these different themes and trends. So tonight is a good night. It gets our juices flowing. And we get to see Iowa and Port Charlotte and these places. We get to see what real democracy looks like.
Governor?
It's the beginning of the end of the Trump presidency. That's what I'm so excited about. The whole season starts right now. But I'm looking forward to
You seem optimistic.
I'm optimistic that the process has begun. I'm optimistic. I mean, even looking at the folks who are in Florida, it's just such a cool thing. Democracy is such a wonderful thing. So I am really interested in the storyline between the moderates and the progressives and the storyline between young and old. I think those are going to overlap somewhat, obviously, but I'm really interested to see how people move throughout the night.
Scott? And by the way, I love watching this satellite caucus. I mean, to kind of just watch it happen in real time is fascinating.
It really is. And I've been in 4 presidential elections. I teach a class on this at Harvard, but to like watch it all go down when you legitimately have no idea what's going to happen tonight makes it, you know, you take it out of the classroom and it makes it real and on live TV. It's really amazing what we're seeing. Having been in these campaigns before, I thought I would give a little perspective. the staffers, the heart is beating. You're wondering, did I do everything I could do? Did I knock on every door? Did I work as many hours as was required? So my hat's off, even though I hope these people aren't successful in November, Governor. I hope my hat, this is the lifeblood of American democracy. Campaigns, talking to voters, people casting ballots in the run-up to the peaceful transition of power in the United States of America.
I agree with that. I agree. In January of 21.
So when we transition from Trump to Trump, it's going to be an amazing thing.
Just to piggyback, I do think it is important. Like in 2008, we had a sense, right? You saw the momentum behind Obama. Now, Hillary was still hanging on. Edwards, I know this feels like 200 years ago, but John Edwards was still in the mix. But I think if you polled all of us off air in 2008, most of us say probably going to be Obama. In 2016, we expected Hillary. It was closer than many of us expected. We expected. I really think, I mean, I could see a case made for, you know, we showed the top four. I could see a case made for all of them. I think it's important to note, too, winning is absolutely by far the most important, but don't underplay the overperforming of expectations, especially for someone like Amy Klobuchar. She keeps waiting for that moment. She's good in debates. Numbers moved up a little bit. She keeps waiting for a moment. So if Amy Klobuchar can pass one of those top four and get into the top three, now at least I think you are much more in the mix. I don't think she's going to win. I mean, if she wins, it's a giant story, but there will be an obvious winner from the top. But look at second and third, because sometimes third doesn't mean the same thing for everyone. Third for Joe Biden doesn't mean the same thing as third for Amy Klobuchar.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing about Iowa is that there's usually more than one ticket out of Iowa, so it's like who overperforms, right? Who does better than what we thought they would do. I do think, just stepping back, it's hard to believe that we're here. Because it just feels like we were just here, right? And now it's already happening
It never ended.
Yeah, but what I love about it is we're actually going to now have some actual voters telling us what they think versus we're always talking about the polls.
It's also easy to, I mean, it seemed far away, and then all of a sudden it was happening, and part of that obviously is the impeachment and what's been going on.
No, but I do think that's the impeachment thing has, without question. I mean, look, it's become, the campaign has become so nationalized. Some of that's Trump, but look at the visits in Iowa, 2008, 2012, and now in terms of the candidates who visited, it's way down. Trump has nationalized everything. This is no longer, I'm going to go live in Iowa. And I do think the whole impeachment thing, I mean, look, the closing statements in impeachment ended about, an hour and a half ago, and now we're on to Iowa.
But this is a big night for Democrats, because finally we get to take back the message even for one day, because you have impeachment that ended at 3 o'clock. You have the State of the Union tomorrow, but tonight is the Democrats' night, and you know whomever wins gets to go out and lay out this message. But I do want to say one thing, well, two things. Winning is important. I do remember in 2016 the biggest speech given was by Marco Rubio, who came in third place. That was really the end of his campaign. He came out and he overperformed expectations, and he gave this big speech in the hotel, and that was effectively it. But Iowa is important if you win, because I remember sitting in South Carolina in 2008, and black voters they had two concerns. One, white voters weren't going to vote for Barack Obama, and two, they thought they were going to kill him. The number one question they had was answered because of Iowa. We cannot underscore the import that Iowa caucus voters have. Whether or not you agree with Iowa going first or not, today is very important as a springboard.
After Iowa, it can reframe a candidate. It can make people look at a candidate in a different way, through a different lens.
Totally. To your point, though, just very quickly, I hope we can have a discussion after this year about changing Iowa as being the first.
They're announcing right now in Port Charlotte on the second round of voting. Let's listen in.
It's a total of 132. We did have 3 people who were disappointed that their groups were not viable and chose not to stay. So we had 135 on the first alignment and 132 on the second alignment. Okay, so now I need to figure out the percentages of the delegates. And so let me calculate that, and we'll get it while you search. There are 9 candidates, so I would say we're talking about 2, 3, or 4, but let me work out the math, please. So start thinking about who's willing to be a delegate to the district and state convention, please. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah. Is that final
So we're going to continue the conversation. We're going to obviously check back in for the results of the second round of the results of the caucus. Again, that's a satellite caucus in Port Charlotte, Florida, for residents of Iowa. No one can just wander in, but It's the first time they're doing these satellite caucuses. What's the rationale behind it? It's just trying to...
Like, caucuses are, by nature, slightly undemocratic, because if you're working, if you don't have childcare, you can't sit and wait for hours on end. Usually you can just go down and vote early in some places, click a ballot, and go home. And so in order to make the process more inclusive, I think the Iowa Democratic Party did all it could do by having these satellite caucuses. And you saw candidates like Elizabeth Warren even offering childcare to caucus goers. And so that's very, very important. And I left off a name earlier because he's going to have a huge impact on the night, and that's Bernie Sanders. Because
I just want to, we're just putting this is actually, we have a counter in the room, so even before they have it, these are the final results by our count in this room. 42% for Amy Klobuchar, 32% for Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Vice President Biden has 25%, and that's it. So that's where things stand right now in Port Charlotte.
It looks like Amy picked up a couple of points on that. This is what is so fascinating about the caucuses, is because the human dynamics in the room about having somebody stand up there and try to persuade, number one, and then see, you heard a bunch of people saying, Amy, Amy, for the folks whose people were not viable. So obviously they were influential in bringing her over. But to your point about the satellite caucuses, the Iowa Democrats have decided to have a caucus for people on the shift that would, to make sure that if they were working in that time frame, the normal caucus, they could go to it. But it is ultimately only about 16% of eligible Iowans participate. So it's really difficult for people who are working.
We're going to shortly go to another caucus site, satellite caucus in St. Petersburg, Florida, also one in Iowa itself. We're going to take a short break. Our coverage continues in just a moment.
Welcome back to CNN's coverage of the Iowa Democratic Presidential Caucuses. I'm Jake Tapper with Dana Bash. We are in Des Moines, Iowa, eagerly awaiting the doors to open for these caucuses. We've seen some results of these satellite caucuses for Iowa Democrats who live in Iowa but are not in Iowa right now, such as in Florida or elsewhere. Not necessarily indicative of what we're going to see statewide, but still interesting nonetheless, Dana.
And it really does give us an early sense, and give our viewers an early sense of what we're going to see across this state in a matter of hours. And to get even more of a sense, I want to go to Tom Foreman, who is in Grinnell, Iowa, who can dig even deeper to explain how these caucuses, while they seem complicated, are set to work with new rules, new guidelines, and perhaps more people.
Yeah, absolutely, Dana and Jake. Look, what you've been looking at on a small scale is about to happen here on a big scale. As close to 1,000 Iowans will flood into this gymnasium in short order to help pick the next Democratic nominee. And here's how they're going to do it. Different areas will be marked off to represent the different candidates. And at the appointed hour, all these people will physically walk to those areas to show their preference. This is the first vote. Once they're there, percentages of the overall vote will be calculated, and importantly, in a big caucus like this, anybody who comes in with less than 15% of the vote will be declared unviable. Those candidates are effectively pushed out, but their supporters are very much in play, and this is why. Every single voter will have a card like this. Look at it a little bit closer, and you can see that on the front they will write their first preference. If your candidate is unviable, you get to flip that card over and you write your second preference. Now, this is going to come amid a lot of wrangling and discussion because, for example, maybe a couple of unviable groups want to join together to make a viable candidate. More likely, you'll have viable candidates reaching out to those people saying, look, come join us, because that's what they can do at that point. They can move from one camp to another and change the equation of the entire room. Few important rules. If you are in a viable camp, you cannot change after the first vote. You are stuck with your first choice. That's it. And if you are in an unviable group, you do not have to pick someone else. You can simply leave if you want to. But after everyone has realigned, they've all went to these different camps, then there will be another count of everyone in the room. And they're going to collect all of those cards that we showed you earlier. So they'll create a paper trail of who had support at the beginning, who ended up with support at the end. And when you put that all together from those two votes, the second vote's the one that matters, then you'll have the final percentages in this, one of the biggest caucuses in the entire state, but in a whole lot more like it at a smaller scale all across Iowa. That's what the caucus is all about under these rules, and that's how it's going to happen. Dana, Jake?
Thank you so much, Tom. That was really cool. I mean, that was really fascinating, Jake. We're going to be able to see that, you and I, in person pretty soon, but to be able to show our viewers that in a really understandable way, what could be a very complicated process.
Does this caucus goers remind you at all of Paul and Paulina from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and the Planet Purple?
A little bit.
A little bit? Anyway,
we're showing our age.
We're gonna visit a Polk County Democrats Caucus 47 in a little bit ourselves. Stay tuned and stay with CNN. We're gonna squeeze in a quick break. We'll be right back with more coverage of the Iowa Democratic Caucus.
We're watching what's happening at some of these so-called satellite caucuses outside of Iowa, where Iowans can come and they can caucus. Let's go to St. Petersburg, Florida. Diane Gallagher. Diane, I take it you're at a church there where people have gathered?
Yeah, Wolf, we're in a church right now, and this is sort of the holding area as they check people in. About 120 Iowans, registered Democrats, are registered to take part in this caucus right here. At this moment, they're sitting down. The doors for the room where they're going to caucus don't open until 5, and they've been kind of trying to deal with what they can at this point. I've been talking to people all about how excited they are that this has finally come here, that it's accessible. This is Lucy. I was speaking to Lucy, and you're from Sioux Center, and you drove. You aren't vacationing here in St. Petersburg. Talk to me about it.
I'm a snowbird and stay here in Florida for about 6 months. But when I'm in Iowa, I live in Sioux Center, Iowa, which is the most conservative Republican county in Iowa.
But you're not a snowbird in St. Petersburg. You drove a long way to come do this.
Yes, I snowbird in Ormond Beach, Florida, which is in the Daytona Beach area. And so my friend and I drove here for 4 hours to be at this caucus.
Do you know who you're caucusing for?
Oh, yes.
Who?
Elizabeth Warren. Go, Elizabeth.
I'm for Amy. When did you make up your mind?
Well, you know, I met, because we live in Iowa, the candidates all come visit us. And Elizabeth Warren even came to our small community, and I heard her speak, and I made a connection with her, and she just has the energy and the knowledge and the background to do what I think our country needs to do at this point in time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You know, Wolf, I'm going to tell you, we've been in here, again, about 120 registered Iowa Democrats expected for the first time to be able to caucus in Florida, here in St. Petersburg, driving from all over the state. I'm going to send it back to you. We should be starting our caucus within the next 45 minutes here.
Oh, we'll stay in close touch with you, Diane. Thank you very much. Let's go to Queen Creek, Arizona. That's not too far from Phoenix. Sarah Seidner is on the scene for us at that satellite caucus.
Yeah. It's exciting here because we're inside of a theater here in Queen Creek, and the thing that has a lot of people excited, I'm going to give you a look kind of what the scene looks like. People are coming in slowly. They have already pre-registered. They know that these are Iowa residents who are coming to caucus for the very first time, but they're being able to do it in a warm place, and that's giving a lot of people a lot of comfort and joy. Very excited about caucusing, and to give you some idea of just how popular this has been, the person who was coordinating this, Joan Koenig, she said that she was going to have this in her house, and there were only 30 people, but then it ballooned to 50. She thought, okay, I can do it, and then it ballooned again to 100, and she said, all right, that's it. We're going to have to find a new place, and it doubled from there. So we're expecting somewhere between 175 and 190 people here in Queen Creek, Arizona. I want to let you meet a couple of people who are here. They are obvious fans of the Chiefs. Don't let that fool you. Douglas Kretzinger and his wife, Daria Schmidt, are both here. Now, you have caucused before, but you have not. Tell me about this relationship and what you guys talk about at the table, because there is something that you guys do disagree on, which, of course, is not the Chiefs.
No. That's true. Well, you know, we both respect each other's independent thinking here, but, you know, I've caucused several years now, last 5 elections, and I'm time, very experienced in it. We just avoid a couple of topics. This is his first one, and I'm really proud that he's taking advantage of what we were all getting to do here, which is be in Iowa and be in Arizona at the same time for this real important task we have.
Very cool. You are caucusing, though, for Amy Klobuchar, and you are not. You are caucusing for Bernie Sanders.
I am.
Tell me about your first time, and are you excited?
I'm very excited. You know, we're here in Phoenix, Arizona. Came to vacation to be with some friends and watch the Super Bowl. And when we heard that they were going to allow us to caucus while we were on vacation in Phoenix, we said absolutely yes. And when we heard there was 190 people, we were surprised that there were that many.
What does that tell you both about how important this is, especially to Democrats in this state? I know you guys are from Iowa, but in this state, a lot of Democrats are hoping that they can start to turn this state at some point.
So it just raises the awareness to the importance of this election, and everybody's taking it seriously. We're taking it seriously. We're here for 3.5 days, but we're carving the whole afternoon out to get this job done, doing our part.
This is part of your vacation. Okay, just quickly, what can you tell me in a few words? Why Bernie Sanders? Why should he be the nominee?
He's very electable. He wins all the polls against Trump. He has the most progressive agenda of anybody. I'm a big fan of Medicare for all, and I promised my son that I would caucus for him.
Okay, that's a good reason. Why Amy Klobuchar?
Well, let's stay on the same topic. I think her approach to getting medical coverage for all of us in a stepwise manner, where we're going to do the optional first, and then we can transition the rest of our country. It's a big haul. This is a good way to do it. She works across the aisle quite well, and you know, she's a Midwestern gal with some Midwestern, really good Midwestern characteristics. That's what we need to lead our country.
You guys are fantastic, Daria and Douglas. I hope there are no arguments tonight. Congratulations to you and the Chiefs.
Thank you.
Wolf, I'll send it back to you.
All right, Sarah, thank you very much. Thank them for us as well. All right, we're only just getting started. More caucuses. They are about to get going. Much more of our special coverage right after this. Right now, the presidential race is all about Iowa as Democrats hold the first contest of the 2020 campaign. I'm Wolf Blitzer in the CNN Election Center. A little over 3 hours from now, Iowa voters will take part in caucuses across the state. They have the power to narrow down the large field of Democratic candidates and give the winner a jolt of momentum going forward. We expect to get more early results soon, though, from what are called satellite caucuses being held in and outside of Iowa, including cities across the country. The next satellite caucuses we're covering start in Des Moines, Iowa, as well as Queen Creek, Arizona. That's near Phoenix later this hour. Another one is about to get underway in St. Petersburg, Florida. We're covering those caucuses and the results live. Let's check in with Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. They're joining us from Des Moines. Guys?
Thanks so much, Wolf. And Dana, one of the things we're going to be looking for right now, because the caucuses are more than just a measure of support, it's a measure of the passion that supporters have, because you have to get them not just to the polls to vote, but to go into a caucus and to argue and to advocate for your candidate. And so that's one of the things the Iowa caucuses measure. Let's check in right now with Arlette Saenz, who covers the campaign of Vice President Joe Biden for us. She's at Drake University at the Olmsted Center, Drake University, home of the Bulldogs. And Arlette, how is the Biden campaign feeling right now? He's been ahead in some polls. In more recent polls in Iowa, he has been in the top 4, but not necessarily in the top post.
Well, Jake, Joe Biden's campaign has certainly tried to downplay expectations here in the state. Biden said that he's feeling good heading into tonight, but his campaign is not flat out saying that they are going to win tonight, with the exception of Jill Biden, who this morning on CNN told us that she believes that he will win here in Iowa and in the other 3 early primary voting states. Now, Biden personally has told me that he thinks this will be a toss-up, and today he insisted that he could survive a loss here in Iowa. The campaign has long said that they don't necessarily need to win Iowa in order to win the nomination, but they have invested significant time and resources here in the state to ensure that they're going to have a strong finish. Joe Biden has said that this is the beginning of a long process. Now, today, Biden spent some time with his family. He actually delivered some pizza to staffers and volunteers at one of his field offices. And today is a very personal day for Joe Biden and his family. Today, February 3rd, is the birthday of his late son, Beau Biden. He would have turned 51 years old today. And Biden, in the past few weeks, has said that it should be Beau running for president. And I've heard him on several occasions tell Iowans here that he hopes Beau will be his good luck charm tonight. Jake.
All right, Arlette, thank you so much. Obviously, very sad memory for Vice President Biden. Beau Biden, a wonderful guy. Everybody who knew him thought that. We should note that the Biden plan is that he does not necessarily need to win Iowa or New Hampshire or even Nevada, which comes after that. He's banking on later states. But it is also true that the last 4 Democratic nominees, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, John Kerry, and Al Gore, all of them did win the Iowa caucuses.
It's what we call the expectations game, is for sure. On that note, I want to go to Ryan Nobles, who was with the Bernie Sanders campaign. And Ryan, I was with you at Senator Sanders, one of his events yesterday, and his closing message, at least part of it, is low turnout is bad for me, high turnout is good for me.
Yeah, and you heard Jake talk about enthusiasm, and enthusiasm being such an important part of the Iowa caucuses. And there's no doubt the Sanders campaign believes that the enthusiasm is with their campaign. They believe that his supporters are the most passionate in the Democratic field, and they do feel confident going into this race tonight. But there is no doubt that they are employing what is their own advisors admit is a risky strategy. I had one advisor describe it to me as a big gamble, and that's because they're coming at this caucus process a little bit differently than candidates in the past have. They're relying on a lot of really unreliable voting blocks, young people, voters of color who don't traditionally have been able to come out in big numbers in the Iowa caucuses, and also first-time caucus goers. The Sanders campaign has made a concerted effort to go after these voters, encourage them to get into the political process with the pitch that Bernie Sanders is dealing and confronting issues that politicians in the past have ignored and politicians have just not cared about in these communities. Now, I talked to one top aide this morning, even as of this morning, who said that they know this is a risky strategy that has, because it is so untested, it has just as good a chance of failing as it does succeeding. But this is the way that Bernie Sanders wants to run a campaign. This is the way he wants to win this caucus, because they believe if he does, that could turn the tables on political strategy going forward, could maybe in many ways even reshape the American political landscape. Now, with all that being said, even though they feel very confident about their chances here in Iowa, they don't believe tonight is a must-win, but they do acknowledge that if they don't win here tonight, it is going to be much more of an uphill climb for them heading into the rest of the Democratic nominating contest. Deanna?
That's right, Ryan. And Jake, you know, one of the things that I've been hearing from people, not just in the Sanders campaign, but kind of unaffiliated Democrats here in Iowa, is that 4 years ago, people saw Bernie Sanders on the rise, but they saw it as kind of an act of love and passion, not necessarily that he was going to be the nominee, and that in the last few weeks, the people who are watching his campaign, and obviously those who are part of his campaign, are seeing him more and more as the nominee. It doesn't mean he's going to win here. It doesn't mean he's going to be the nominee. But the perception, I'm told by a lot of people, is shifting a bit.
Sure, and he's been ahead in some of the polls here, and certainly the New Hampshire primary is in a week and a day, and he's from neighboring Vermont. He's leading there. And remember, he came in second in the Iowa caucuses 4 years ago, but it was so close. Razor thin close behind Hillary Clinton. Former Secretary Hillary Clinton, and that you talk about the expectation game. The fact that he was so close when his campaign was the real underdog changed the trajectory of his race and made it much more competitive. Let's go back to Anderson Cooper with the panel. Anderson.
Yeah, Jake, Dana, thanks very much. Who do you think for whom, Bakari, I mean, for whom is it do or die in Iowa?
Well, I honestly think that Pete and Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren have to do extremely well tonight. They have to either meet expectations or exceed them. The reason being is because unlike Bernie to a certain extent, and definitely Biden, they struggle with voters of color. And if you don't do well in Iowa and New Hampshire, that does not portend well for the rest of the primary season as we get more and more diverse. And we know we've heard the stories about Pete Buttigieg and how well he does with black voters, or how well he doesn't do with black voters. The irony in all of that is Amy Klobuchar actually polls worse than him with black voters. And so Bernie Sanders has been working diligently since 2014-15, trying to cultivate this base and introduce himself. And so he's doing much better because of the effort and the work he's put in. Biden is still running away, but if Klobuchar, Buttigieg, and Warren do not do well tonight, where are they going to do well when it becomes more diverse?
Except I don't think that after tonight, any one of these 7 are going to drop out.
No, I didn't say that.
Right, okay. Yeah, just
I mean, you can be running like a dead man's campaign.
I mean, Tom Steyer is a billionaire. He's going to go on.
He's also got a lot of people on the ground in South Carolina. Tom Steyer.
And poll numbers in South Carolina that look pretty decent. Third place behind Biden and Warren.
And Andrew Yang has an unusual constituency that does not include a lot of traditional Democrats. And so he's got a lot of money. Pete Buttigieg has still a good amount of money. You're totally right that by the time they get to Nevada and South Carolina, they've got to show some movement with respect to people of color, but they're all going to go on to New Hampshire.
Oh, no doubt about that.
I feel like there's a lot of pressure on Biden, though. I mean, he's supposed to be the guy who's the electable one. He's supposed to be the one, and if he can't beat Sanders outright here in Iowa, especially because one of his arguments is he's somehow going to bring over those Trump voters, you know, who are going to come back and vote for Democrats, who are white voters. So Iowa white voters,
but he's
right?
not going to drop out after tonight.
No, I'm not saying he's going to drop out. I'm just saying I think there's a lot of pressure on him
which his campaign has been trying already.
And they're obviously trying to lower the expectations, but I mean, what would their explanation be? It seems like I know people say, well, he does better with African American voters, but part of his argument is that he's going to appeal to those white working class voters that went for Trump.
Yeah, I always go back.
They're not showing up at the caucus.
True.
Let's just be clear.
I go back to the Arlette was saying, well, he's okay if he doesn't win Iowa or New Hampshire or even Nevada. You just wait to South Carolina. I mean, I would ask Republican nominee 2008 Rudy Giuliani how we'll just wait a few states to win things. This is what I'll say, McCarty. It's the only thing I'll say about South Carolina. And I agree with you about the diversity of Iowa and New Hampshire. I'm not disputing that this is not a representative sample of the Democratic Party. A poll came out yesterday, Charleston Post and Courier, that shows Biden's still ahead in South Carolina, but a much narrower margin with Sanders. So I just...
Let me just add a footnote. When we're talking about that poll is absolutely not reportable. It's from a C-plus polling agency, and their BVAP, the black voters they had in that poll, were 33%. 33%.
And we know it's going to be more than 60%. We know South Carolina will always be 50% or over. I just don't think his strength... I'm always wary of... He will last from February 3rd to February 29th. If he doesn't win any of those places, his support will last. Maybe it will, because it is built in a little bit, because he's been the vice president of the United States. And I will say that a lot of this is... But it's a worrisome thing if I'm the candidate if I don't win.
A lot of Joe Biden is the inevitability of Joe Biden. And you're right, that if those take chips tonight, but I still think that if Joe Biden comes in first, second, third... then we got a chance.
Look, I mean, to Chris's point, not only you can't win the nomination unless you're winning some places. Also, over that period of time, if you're not winning, guess what else is not happening? Folks are not writing checks to you. And his supporters are not these small dollar committed donors the way the Sanders people are. That's what makes the Sanders candidacy so formidable in a format like this. It's a lot like Trump 2016. His people are all in. They're unaffected by the news. They are small dollar donors, and they are fully committed to this campaign. I think in a fragmented field,
Democrats, and this is what Democrats need. Democrats need Yang and Sanders to beat Donald Trump. So all my friends who are in the middle of the party, I think we need to remember that as well.
We're monitoring the satellite caucuses in St. Petersburg, Florida, Des Moines, Iowa, as well as Queen Creek, Arizona. We're waiting more early results as Iowa Democrats in and out of state cast their votes. Much more ahead. Stay with us.
We're following the Iowa caucuses right now. Some of the early so-called satellite caucuses, they're getting ready. You can see one in St. Petersburg, Florida. Folks have gathered there in Des Moines, Iowa. These are for shift workers. People who have to work the night shift, they can go to a satellite caucus in Des Moines. In Queen Creek, Arizona, not too far from Phoenix. They're getting ready for a caucus there as well. Let's go over to John King at the Magic Wall for us. John, set the scene over here. You and I are going to be spending some quality time together tonight. What are you looking for?
We're at the starting gate. Here we go. Iowa votes tonight. This is the map. Obviously, it's blank right now. We're waiting for the results. The candidates in alphabetical order at the moment as you go through them here. Once we start getting in the allocation of delegates, obviously they'll flip and be by first. So what are we looking for? Let's go back in time. Let's go back in time 4 years ago to that very, very competitive. Look how close it was between Secretary Clinton and Senator Sanders 4 years ago. This is the map 4 years ago. But we can use it tonight just to take a look. Iowa sometimes surprises. So will Senator Amy Klobuchar, will she have a surprise? Well, she's from Minnesota, right up here. So one thing we'll watch early on, just those counties closest to Minnesota, where they might know her best. Is there any results there that say, maybe we should keep an eye on Senator Klobuchar through the night? Another big dynamic, Wolf, that we know is going on throughout this race, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. Will progressives split fairly evenly, or will they break for one candidate or the other? Good place to watch that. You see over here the lighter blue from 4 years ago. The eastern part of the state is the more progressive, liberal part of the state. So let's take a look there. One of the places you might look, Johnson County, Iowa City. Iowa State is in here, the college town. Is Bernie Sanders, A, getting older progressives and college students? If you can put that together, you'll see some math over there. Another place to look for here is Lynn County. That's Cedar Rapids. A little bigger, a little more populous. You see the margin there with Senator Sanders key 4 years ago. Is he winning that again? He won't win it by that margin, of course, with so many candidates. But is he getting a lot of delegates over there again, or is he having a fight and splitting it with Warren? That's another thing we'll look at as the night goes on. Largest county in the state is over here, Polk County. It has the urban area of Des Moines. The suburbs around Des Moines were critical to the Democratic gains, not just in Iowa, across the country in 2018. Elizabeth Warren has focused a lot on the suburbs. Joe Biden needs to get the Democratic establishment in that urban area. All the other candidates are competing there as well. Again, it's the biggest part of the state. We'll watch that. One other thing, Wolf, that we'll be watching as this plays out is a lot of the candidates, as they campaign in Iowa, they talk about what happened last time. Remember, Iowa voted twice. These are flipped counties here. These are 31 counties. This is basically, let me bring it up to 2020 so you don't see the colors. See the gray? 31 counties in Iowa. It has 99 counties. 31, almost a third of the counties in the state voted twice for Barack Obama and then flipped and voted for Donald Trump. For Democrats, a point of pride. Mayor Buttigieg has stressed this, going into some of these counties, saying we have to get these voters back. I just want to show you what that looks like. Remember this part of the state here. I'm going to just draw a line around this gray. I'm going to miss a couple. You see, there's a couple counties inside there that aren't. But most of these counties here in the eastern part of the state flipped, right? So what does that mean? Let's go back and take a look. This is the presidential race in 2016. Let's come to the general election. You see all that red? This is Donald Trump in 2016. What happened? In 2012, they were for Obama. In 2008, they were for Obama. This is a huge source of pride for Iowa Democrats. They say if we're going to get our state back in November, that's a tough haul. Trump is counting on winning it again. But these counties here, another thing to watch tonight. Are the Democrats competitive? Is turnout up? Are Democrats energized in what are called the pivot counties? Again, you look at them across the country, there are 31 of them in this state with 99 counties. Another thing to watch tonight as we get out of the gates of the first Democratic contest with an eye toward whether or not Iowa might be competitive come November.
You mentioned the eastern part of the state. That's a little bit more populous than the western part of the state. What are you looking at west?
So let's come back to the 2016 map and use it this way. And let's come out of these counties, close these Trump counties so you just take a look at it. If you look out here, Bernie Sanders did pretty well out here as well. So you have these smaller rural areas. You got the urban areas, the suburban areas, and the more rural areas. Sioux City would be the largest out here. And you see the margin that Bernie Sanders ran up here as well. The question is, with so many candidates in the race, this is essentially a two-person race. By this point, Governor O'Malley was a non-factor. The best we can do to look at this would be to go back to 2008, where you had three viable candidates. Remember Senator Edwards, Senator Obama, and Senator Clinton back in those days, and you had more of a mix. That's one of the things we'll be watching with the field so crowded, Wolf. It's not just a two-candidate race, so the math sometimes gets a little more complicated.
Certainly does. All right, John, we'll get back to you. David Chalian is taking a close look at the rules right now. Why are the caucuses tonight different than all the previous caucuses in Iowa?
It's a good question, and in a couple different ways. First, I think one of the more significant rule changes that we've seen is that, you know, Wolf, that as you saw, some early satellite caucusing, the caucusing happens in 2 rounds of voting. There's a first round, people come into the caucus room, they express their initial preference of which candidates they want to support, and then there's a tabulation done to determine who among the candidates is not what they call viable. In most places, that means who is falling below 15% support in the room. Once it's determined which candidates are not viable, they're not in the second round. Now, caucus goers have the opportunity if they were with a non-viable candidate, to go and support a viable candidacy. But here's where the rule change comes in. For the first time, if you are with a viable candidate in that first round of caucusing, therefore, let's say you're with Joe Biden's campaign, and you go into his corner in the caucus room, Wolf, and it's determined he has more than 15% support, you're locked into Joe Biden for the rest of the night. You can't move around in that second round of voting. You're staying with Joe Biden. So that's a key rule change, because there's only one opportunity for people to change their vote, and it's only if they weren't with a viable candidate. The other thing I think you have to know about tonight is that we're going to have more information than we've ever had before in the Iowa caucuses, Wolf. We're going to get 3 pieces of election results tonight, all simultaneously. We used to only get 1. The most important, of course, is the state delegates, those percentages. That is going to determine the winner of the Iowa caucuses. That's how our decision desk is going to make its projection. But there are 2 other pieces of information we're going to have tonight. We're going to have the popular vote, the actual head count of how many people showed up to support each candidate. And we're going to have that both from that initial round of voting and that final round of voting. So we'll have a popular vote, and we'll have this delegate count that determines the winner. Think of it like the Electoral College in the general election.
The delegate count, that's what's critical. Exactly. Right now, we'll be watching that closely. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, much more of our special coverage, including a special interview with Dr. Jill Biden, the wife of Joe Biden.
You're looking right now at one of the satellite caucuses. This one is actually in Iowa, not outside of Iowa, like some of the others we've been following in Florida and France. This one is in Iowa. It's for shift workers who are not going to be able later this evening attend the Iowa caucuses. It's yet another attempt by organizers to make the Iowa caucuses more small d democratic, not just available for a certain few who can afford to take a few hours out of their evening. This has been one of the concerns that some people, including former Iowa caucus winner Hillary Clinton, have voiced about the inability of people who have childcare needs or work at night to participate. And so that's one attempt we saw right there. But coming back to the story of the day, one of the things that we're all going to be looking for is how well is Vice President Biden going to do? Of course, he ran for president twice before. The first time he dropped out before the Iowa caucuses. The second time he dropped out right after the Iowa caucuses. He got less than 1% of the vote, but obviously he's one of the front runners now. Is he going to clean up? Is he going to win the Iowa caucuses? He was in the front for many, many months in the polls nationally and here in Iowa, although he's been lagging behind in recent polls.
That's right. I was at an event with him yesterday, and it was a packed gym. It was a very warm gym. There were a lot of local officials there who spoke before him. You know, there was enthusiasm, but, you know, at other campaigns, maybe at that particular event, I can say there was maybe more enthusiasm than what I saw, but it might not matter when it comes to somebody like Joe Biden, who has very high name recognition and a lot of things going for him. And on that note, I want to go to Arlette Saenz. Arlette, I know you have a special guest with you.
That's right, Dana. Jill Biden is joining us here in Des Moines. And how are you guys feeling heading into tonight? What are you expecting?
We're feeling strong, we're feeling confident, and we're excited.
And where are you guys going to watch these results coming in? Do you have any rituals as you're keeping tabs on the tally that's coming in over the night?
No, I think we'll be back at our hotel watching the results, watching things as they happen, things as they come in. And we'll be with our grandchildren who are here, so we'll just, you know, be with our family.
And how do you think you have to finish tonight in Iowa?
We have to finish strong, and because we're ready to go on tomorrow to New Hampshire and then go on to South Carolina and Nevada and take this thing to the very end.
And what exactly does strong mean?
Strong means coming in strong. I mean, I think that Joe has been all over this state, and his poll numbers look good. He looks, I mean, Iowans are saying to me, I'm going to caucus for Joe, whether they're Republicans or independents. They're changing the registration for the night, and Democrats. So everywhere I go, people are coming up to me and just saying, Jill, I'm going to caucus for Joe.
And you've been spending a lot of time here, so I'm sure you're eager to see those results.
A lot, yeah, I am. So this is it. Tonight's it.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Jake and Dana.
Thanks, Arlette. And Joe Biden's, a lot of his big argument is return to normalcy of the Obama years, or a bit of a nostalgia factor, but also electability, the idea that he is best suited to beat Donald Trump, which is a huge idea of importance for Democrats.
By far, he talks the most about Donald Trump on the stump. I mean, it's not even a comparison. The others talk about him a bit, but they're also talking more in a more robust way about what they would do, about their plans, about their stories. And he is very much on message about the fact that this is why he's running, because Donald Trump needs to go.
And President Trump is in the midst of an impeachment trial right now because of Joe Biden, because of his calls for Biden to be investigated by the Ukrainian government. Anderson?
Jake, Dana, thanks very much. A lot of Republicans are going to be looking at this tonight to see how Joe Biden does, and if what happened during the impeachment trials, if that has any impact.
Yeah, I think there can be no overstating how critical it is for Democrats that they put somebody in place who will beat this president. In Iowa, the polls have been 60 to 70%. That is the #1 thing. And people see Joe Biden, everybody says, a lot of people have said, oh, it's going backwards. But actually, I mean, he wants to be able to have the country be normal. But his policies actually are more progressive than the Obama administration's
We should say you've done work with Joe Biden.
Absolutely, and I haven't been able to endorse anybody, but I did help him out on the first couple of debates. And therefore, I know the policies, and I played Elizabeth Warren, so I know her policies, too. But all I want to say is a lot of people have been saying, oh, it's all about going back. He would be the first to say, I don't want to go back. I just want this country to be saved. And people view Joe Biden as a kind person, a person who has gone through a lot, and they want a good human being.
Is that the campaign trying to have it both ways, essentially saying, I'm a candidate who can appeal to Republicans because I'm not Bernie Sanders, and yet also trying to say, I'm as progressive as anyone out there?
I think all of the candidates, well, the leading candidates, I think anyone would tell you that they're more progressive than Barack Obama was. I think you just have a more progressive
I think
group.
it's true.
I think the party, the window, the frame of policy has moved. A lot of that has to do with Bernie Sanders.
That's true.
But the window has moved. And I think one of the things that Democrats have to do, and I spend a lot of time, too much time, on the Twitter, with Saleza,
any time is probably too
but one of the things that you see is this friction and this bickering, and I think that tonight is the beginning of what we hope to be Democrats actually coming together, something that we didn't quite have, that we didn't have the gel that we needed in 2016, and so. Yeah, I think we remember 2016.
You think tonight is the beginning of it coming together?
No, I think that after now we get the vote, right? So it's cathartic. So people get the vote. The primary process is underway. You'll get there. Of course, it's a contact sport, but maybe I'm hopeful. Can I be hopeful?
You can be hopeful.
Yes.
I think that, but I don't think that's going to happen, probably. The thing is that, yes, everybody's more progressive than Barack Obama was, but you still have this huge divide between the Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders view of the world and everybody else. And so what we're seeing as people start voting is people weighing in on, do they want somebody who's progressive or just progressive, or do they want somebody who's actually going to upend the whole system, who's basically saying the system is rotten and we need to rebuild it?
Right. More people are saying we want to beat this guy than anything.
And to the governor's point, and this doesn't dispute what Kirsten said at all, the one thing I would say is you do have, Biden has been talking electability throughout, right? Every ad, I mean, his last ad essentially says, I'm the one who can win. And the ad shows people, shows swing state polling in the ad, very process-oriented. But I also think Governor Buttigieg, right? Bernie Sanders is saying, look, I'm the one who's the most electable because there are people who are for me who aren't going to be for any of those other Democrats. Elizabeth Warren, who ran on, I'm the policy person, I'm the detailed progressive. Now she's closing on an electability message. She can unite the party. So I don't know if that bodes well for Joe Biden, who's kind of been on that electability message, but it does speak to the overarching. Bakari mentioned this. Trump's
and
how big he is.
They all are closing.
But this idea that Republican voters are looking to see if there's a Democrat that comes out of that they can support, that is a That's a pure myth. Even Biden, the one who's preaching electability,
They're never Trumpers.
and preaching.
They're no longer Republicans.
Yeah, I recognize that the constituency of never Trumpers on television is high, but out in the hinterlands.
Talk about Twitter versus real life.
I don't think that's true. I don't think.
You look at Biden preaching electability, preaching I can reach out to these people. The things he has said in this primary about abortion, about banning all fracking and fossil fuels and the hundreds of thousands of jobs that have come along with that, the things he raised his hand to for free health care for illegal immigrants, just like everybody else. So I think this is a myth that he's preaching, that I can somehow get people when he's taken many of these same positions that Warren and Sanders have.
I think one of the conversations that we had off air during a commercial is actually relevant now. I'm the Democrat who believes that the person we need to elect has to be able to go back and get those 4 million people who voted in 2012 who do not vote in 2016. 1.3 of those are black, and bring those Republicans who want something better.
Stay with us as we bring you more early results from satellite caucuses for Iowa voters in and outside of the state. We're at locations in Des Moines, Iowa, also Queen Creek, Arizona, near Phoenix, bringing the votes as they happen.
We've been spending some time looking at what are being called the satellite caucuses that are already underway. Let's go over to Jeff Zeleny. He's joining us right now from Des Moines, where one of those satellite caucuses is taking place about 2 hours, 20 minutes before the regular caucuses begin throughout the state.
Yep.
Jeff Zeleny, go ahead.
And you can see we're in the satellite caucus here, Wolf, at Drake University's Fieldhouse. You can see the voters coming behind me here. There are a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters, Elizabeth Warren supporters as well. They are taking the floor here. And Wolf, what this is, we've been seeing satellite caucuses throughout the afternoon. These are Iowans who are working this evening. I've been talking to many of them. Some of them are campaign workers. Some of them are Drake University workers. Others just have evening obligations at work. So what they're doing now is filing off of the stands here, and they're going to be walking toward their positions, and they're going to be behind hurdles. We are again at Drake University at the Fieldhouse, home of the Drake Relays. And you can see the hurdles behind me here. Each candidate is separated by a hurdle with their name on it. So you can see the Warren supporters behind me right here, standing behind those hurdles. Wolf, even Mike Bloomberg has a spot here. No one, of course, behind his hurdle. He is not competing here in Iowa. But we can follow now over to the Bernie Sanders supporters. You can see a lot of them gathering over here behind them in the hurdles. And we should point out, Wolf, that this is not necessarily representative of this precinct, because these are people from all over Des Moines, all over central Iowa, who have applied to be at this caucus site because they have to work this evening. But no question, a lot of support, enthusiasm for Bernie Sanders. We'll see how it turns out when the counting begins. Wolf?
This is really the first round of voting, Jeff, that's going on at these satellite caucuses. But show us where the people are. Where are they? They're walking in right now, I take it. If you could show us where they're heading, that would be great, if we could see the lines of people walking in.
For sure, Wolf. They've just come off the bleachers, and now they are standing over here on the actual floor. You can hear them cheering and shouting, and there certainly are a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters. So once they all get in place, they're going to count them and count their preference. I see some Elizabeth Warren supporters, a much smaller number. Some Pete Buttigieg supporters, a smaller number as well. But clearly the Bernie Sanders supporters here at least appear to have a lot of enthusiasm in numbers. But they will count these, and then they will see who won this satellite caucus. But, Wolf, we should point out, this is a significant rule change from 4 years ago, largely because of Bernie Sanders. He and Hillary Clinton said this is not a democratic process. They should have other abilities for people to vote who can't make their caucus. So that's why they are here. So we're going to step out of the way and watch these supporters here as they begin numbering off, counting to themselves, and we will find out how many Sanders supporters are here at the end of the thing. And Wolf, we should also point out that this is in the same location. In just a couple hours, there will be Des Moines' 38th precinct. That will be much more interesting to watch, because that is going to be very competitive among all the candidates. It's representative of this part of Des Moines, Wolf. But certainly the satellite caucus, a new development from 4 years ago for that reason.
Certainly is over at Drake University in Des Moines. We'll get back to you. We'll watch that satellite caucus unfold. Sarah Seidner, she's at a satellite caucus all the way out near Phoenix in Queen Creek, Arizona. What's the latest over there, Sarah?
people are happy because it's warm and they don't have to deal with this sort of Iowa cold right now. But this place is starting to fill up now. We're inside of a theater. This is where they had to have it. It was going to be in the organizer's home, and then the crowd exploded. A lot of people wanted to take part. Just give you an idea of how it's set up. You see the sign there, Biden-Warren. So folks on this side are, they're here caucusing for Biden. Folks in the middle sort of caucusing for Sanders. And then on the other side, you've got Buttigieg, Klobuchar up there, Warren down here. I've got two folks here who I'm happy to talk to. John Kibbe, he is here from Iowa, as is Abby, and they both are caucusing for different people. Tell me, John, who are you caucusing for and why?
I'm caucusing for Vice President Joe Biden, and for his experience and how smart he is and how he can work with the other party and especially our allies overseas. We're in this trouble in America with this guy. I think he's got the best chance of beating Trump of all the other candidates. None of them I dislike, and everybody's going to have to be united together in order to win this next election.
Thank you so much, John. Now, I want just to let you know that right now the organizer here is talking to the crowd to tell them what to do. If you want to listen to a little bit of that, we can do that now so that you can sort of hear how she's going to call to order. She's introducing herself now. Joan is just behind us there. I'm going to let you kind of see her, and she's giving the rules now. The people only have about 10 minutes until they're supposed to be here. And so she's basically saying, look, people have 10, 15 minutes, and then we have to get this started. We're going to start the counting now. I'm going to have you turn around there and
welcome you to
take a listen.
Theater and this historic event you have chosen to participate in today. I am your temporary chair, and this journey.
All right, we're going to continue to watch this satellite caucus in Queen Creek, Arizona, not far from Phoenix. We'll get the results from that satellite caucus going on right now in Des Moines. Much more of our special coverage
after they line up
right after
and count
this.
The others.
All right, let's check back with Jeff Zeleny. He's over in Des Moines at one of these satellite caucuses. These are people who won't be able to attend more than 1,600 caucuses throughout the state later tonight. They got work, they're shift workers, they have other responsibilities. What are you seeing?
Well, we are definitely seeing a strong sign for Bernie Sanders here. We are seeing 71 people here total in this satellite caucus. I'm also seeing some top Sanders supporters and campaign officials here, including, excuse me, Misty, the state director of the Bernie Sanders campaign. Why are you caucusing now? Are you going to be busy this evening, I'm guessing?
Yes, I'm planning to be busy this evening, and I'm going to take advantage of the satellite caucus and be here to caucus for Bernie.
So as you know, this is, as an Iowan, you know, this is the very first time that satellite caucuses have happened. Why is this a good thing, do you think, to allow others an opportunity as opposed to just showing up at 7:30 tonight?
Sure, I think it makes the caucus process more accessible to working people. You might be a second shift worker, so you could come earlier in the day and, you know, access the caucus process. Also, you know, workplaces, some workplaces have actually held caucuses today during shift change. So again, it just creates a more accessible process.
Okay, well, that's great. It looks like you have some strong support here. We'll find out the results. And as we go around the room here, Wolf, we are going to some other supporters here as well. It's going to take 11 individual people to be viable for a delegate in this satellite caucus. Just eyeballing it, which we are not providing the official count, of course the county officials will. Elizabeth Warren's campaign certainly has the number to be viable here, as you can see. Several people have arrived to caucus for Elizabeth Warren. I've talked to many of them, including some employees of Drake University. We have some Drake University employees here, is that right?
That's right, yes.
And you guys are working this evening?
Yeah, some of us are working this evening, so we wanted a satellite caucus. I have some friends over there who brought kids, or we're taking care of childcare for later tonight.
Okay, well, so we are going to begin the realignment here in this satellite caucus. We'll report back to you once the numbers are in.
We will certainly stay in close touch. Let's go over to David Chalian. David, put these satellite caucuses, first time they've ever done this, into some sort of perspective for us.
Well, this is part of the reforms that came out of the bitter 2016 battle between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. There was a lot of pressure, especially from the Sanders camp, for the party, both the DNC and the Iowa Democratic Party, to make this more accessible. The goal here was to try and allow people who can't show up at a specific time of 7 o'clock Central on a Monday night, to be able to still participate in the caucuses. So the goal here was to expand access, and that's what these satellite caucuses are. They had to go through an application process, so show that they would be able to conduct the caucuses just like they're conducted back home in Iowa. They will not count exactly the same way. Once the total universe of support is determined in terms of turnout, who came out among Iowa Democrats participating in the caucuses, then these satellite caucuses will be weighted. They won't account for as much as a regular real-time caucus, but they are going to allow people to participate in a way that matters, not quite at that same time. Unlike a primary election, Wolf, where you have all day long to vote, you know, polls are open maybe 10 hours a day, you can go and vote. The caucus process has been you got to show up on a cold winter night in a room, stay there for a couple hours. This is now the first time to expand, allow shift workers who had to be on the job at that time, allow people who are spending the winters away in places like Florida or Arizona, the opportunity for Iowa Democrats to participate.
But the results that we're seeing right now, and they're very, very early in these satellite caucuses, whether in Arizona or Florida or overseas in Paris, for example, or Tbilisi, Georgia, there's a satellite caucus, or the one that's ongoing right now in Des Moines. It's very early right now. We should not draw any conclusions.
Without a doubt, there are 87 satellite caucuses. I think there are 1,678 precinct caucuses this evening for the regularly scheduled caucuses. And you cannot extrapolate in any way. You cannot look at what's happening in one room in Arizona right now and think you know how the caucuses are going to turn out tonight. All that is reflective of is what's happening in that one room, nothing more.
Important point indeed. Stand by. We're waiting for more of the results, though. We're getting ready for special coverage, continuing special coverage of the Iowa caucuses. It's decision day in Iowa. Voters are taking part in caucuses. You're looking at some live pictures coming in from one of the caucuses in Des Moines. Caucuses that could shake up the fight for the Democratic presidential nomination. I'm Wolf Blitzer in the CNN Election Center. We're closing in on the official start of the first contest of the 2020 election. Most caucuses begin across Iowa about 2 hours from now. 11 Democratic candidates are hoping to stand out from the pack. Only one will come out on top. Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, they are the leading contenders in Iowa. They're bracing for a close battle tonight. Some caucuses are already underway at satellite locations in and outside of the state. We're awaiting results from caucuses happening right now in Des Moines, Iowa, St. Petersburg, Florida, also in Queen Creek, Arizona, that's near Phoenix. Let's go to Jeff Zeleny. He's in Des Moines at one of those so-called satellite caucuses. Are you getting some results, Jeff?
We are, Wolf, and what we're seeing now is a realignment in real time. There were two candidate preference groups, the Warren campaign and the Sanders campaign, who were viable here. Those were the only two candidates who were viable. So now there are other supporters who are moving around and seeing where they are going to go. We should point out, Wolf, this is a snapshot in time. This is one location. This is one satellite caucus, not indicative, as far as we know, of what is going to happen tonight. It is just one location. But it's clear there is a lot of enthusiasm for the Sanders campaign. Not surprising. They're closing the campaign strong, no question. But we are watching now the realignment. And you can see some people moving back and forth. There's a little bit of discussion going on, as you can see, with a Bernie Sanders supporter perhaps trying to convince a supporter for Pete Buttigieg to come onto their side. The Buttigieg campaign in this particular satellite caucus was not viable. It took 11 people to be viable. They had around 9 or so under a preliminary count. So now there is some conversations in horse trading. Let's look over here to the Warren campaign. Also some conversations going on here with some Sanders supporters and Warren supporters. So, Wolf, again, just a snapshot in time as these satellite caucuses are unfolding. We'll come back to you when we have the numbers from the Drake Fieldhouse. Wolf?
Before you go, Jeff, I want you to explain what a viable candidate means and what realignment means right now, because we're going to be hearing a lot of that over the course of the next several hours.
We are indeed, and in a satellite caucus, the rules are slightly different. So let's talk about the rules of the caucuses overall tonight. The rules are that a candidate has to have 15% support in most caucuses in the room to be viable. If they are not viable, if they don't have 15% support, then the second choice begins to be incredibly important. And what that means is if like here this afternoon, former Mayor Pete Buttigieg was not viable. So then some of his supporters were going to other places. I can see right now, will follow me here if my photojournalist Andy Buck can come with me. There are some people going over to the Sanders campaign. So that's where some of the conversations and horse trading comes into play. This is just a preview of what we're going to see tonight on a much larger scale here. At this very location, there are going to be perhaps more than 500 people gathering, and all the campaigns are certainly working to organize that. But viability and second choice, so important. We are keeping an eye on those second choice decisions tonight for candidates who aren't viable. That could boost someone tonight.
Hold on for
so
a
just
moment,
a snapshot
Jeff.
here. Let's consider this a bit of a test run.
We've got the results from the first round over where you are, and you can take a look at this. Bernie Sanders, 60.6%, Elizabeth Warren, 21.1%, but everybody else below that 15% margin. Pete Buttigieg, 11.3%, Andrew Yang, 4.2%. Klobuchar, 1.4%. So those who support Buttigieg, Yang, and Klobuchar, they have options right now. They're not going to be viable, these three candidates. They're not going to go to the second round. At this one caucus only, Jeff, explain what's happening now. What are their options, those who went for the non-viable candidates?
So what is happening now, if you are supporting a non-viable candidate, then you make another choice. So just eyeballing some of them went over to Senator Warren's campaign. We will find out here in a short period of time what the count is in the second round of counting to see where they all went. But there was the interesting part about this is the persuasion aspect at these caucuses. These precinct captains have been trained by these campaigns to approach someone whose favorite candidate did not make the cut and try and win them over. So you can see, a lot of the discussions. I'm trying to go have a conversation with the one person who is standing for Joe Biden. Let's see if we can chat with him for 1 second. Hey, Jared, excuse me if I can talk to you live on CNN. Sure. So you were supporting Joe Biden. You were the only person in your row. Who did you realign with?
Well, Mayor Pete, but we're one short right now, and we're not sure that there's anyone we can take from with the new rules.
Right. So why did you decide Mayor Pete on the second round? Why him?
I'm more of a moderate Democrat. I care about foreign policy, and I think both Biden and Mayor Pete are the two strongest on foreign policy in my view.
Great. Thank you very much. So, well, that is just a snapshot here of the conversations going on. They're trying to make the Buttigieg campaign viable by getting up to 11 people in this precinct. So, again, consider this a test run, if you will, a preview of what we'll see tonight in nearly 1,700 precincts across the state of Iowa when there are these conversations going on back and forth. Again, second choice, so valuable. One of the most important positions, certainly a weighty position here. So, Wolf, we'll send it back to you as we await this realignment here to see if anyone else becomes viable. As of now, after the first round, certainly Bernie Sanders strong in this precinct. But again, we should point out, this is one satellite caucus, not indicative of the state as a whole. Those caucuses start this evening.
From what I saw, a lot of young people there. Quick question, Jeff. We see Buttigieg, 11.3%. He's not viable. He didn't reach that 15% threshold. What about the Yang supporters and the Klobuchar supporters? I assume they're trying to attract them, and if they get together, they could potentially make Buttigieg viable.
Indeed, they could, and that's they're one person short. And actually, I heard someone say they were looking for that Andrew Yang supporter. And that is the other key thing to watch tonight. If you're not viable, do you stay in the room and go with someone else, or do you go home? Do you leave because you're a candidate was not viable? So that is an important thing to keep an eye on here. But we should point out that this is certainly some young people here, but these are, intended for people who have jobs this evening. So we are expecting, since we are on the campus of Drake University, more students coming tonight. And the Andrew Yang supporters actually won the mock caucus, a trial run earlier in the week. So again, we should point out that this is what's happening now is not necessarily foreshadowing what's to come here tonight, Wolf.
Important point. All right, stand by. We'll get back to you. Want to go to Diane Gallagher. She's over in St. Petersburg, Florida. It looks, Diane, they're just beginning right now, this process in St. Petersburg. The voting continues.
That's right, Wolf. And I'm back here right now as they're trying to kind of keep the area quiet as they pass out these instructions. They have just now given out those preference cards to the 104 voters, Iowa registered Democrats here in St. Petersburg, Florida. We had a bit of a delay dealing with the location that we were at here. They've since gotten that figured out. We're in the room and expecting to be starting relatively soon. They got most of the procedural stuff out of the way at this point. We've been speaking with some of the voters here, a lot of them who spend part of their time in Florida because the winters are cold in Iowa, but there are also college students who are here, as well as people who happen to be visiting family. They were on vacation. So this is something that, as you can listen to them right now, as they're trying to get through, they voted to go ahead and move into their positions first before they hear from any sort of voters or representatives from the particular candidates' campaigns. And then they're going to listen to those speeches before they decide if they want to go ahead and move again. So this has been pretty orderly as it goes right now. Again, they have a pretty large number of people who have chosen to come out to this. People I talked to who are so excited. They were taking selfies and we're waiting to get underway in the next couple minutes here, Wolf.
Looks like a bunch of snowbirds down there in St. Petersburg. Diane, we're going to get the results of that caucus. 104 Iowa voters in St. Petersburg, Florida. Much more of our coverage right after this.
Welcome back. I'm Jake Tapper with Dana Bash. We are in Des Moines at the CNN headquarters for the Iowa caucuses. Right now, you are looking at a satellite caucus at Drake University, and satellite caucuses are not the official caucuses. These are the smaller caucuses, some of them in Florida, some of them in France. This one is for shift workers who will not be able to make the caucuses later this evening.
That's right. And our Jeff Zeleny is there. And he's been, Jeff, you've been watching as the first round ends and as the sort of toing and froing has begun really aggressively to bring the people who supported candidates who were not viable, meaning they didn't get 15%, over to other candidates. What does it look like now?
Right. Dana, this is a fascinating Caucus 101, if you will. I am standing next to Gabe, who's a student at Drake University, who was just getting the hard sell from a Bernie Sanders volunteer. Gabe came here tonight to caucus for Pete Buttigieg. He was not viable, so that makes Gabe's vote up for grabs. So, Gabe, what was the sales pitch that you were just getting moments ago from the Sanders official?
He was going after the I'm more moderate and going after the very liberal aspect of Sanders.
What questions did you have for him?
I really didn't have any. I'm trying to convince other people to go here.
Right.
But
and you just told me that you're probably not likely to go to Sanders.
No.
You're going to do what?
I think I'm going to go to Warren if Pete can't be viable.
And why is that?
I really like, as a student, the student debt thing, but her energy that she brings, I think she has a better chance to beat President Trump.
Okay, so, Gabe, we're going to follow you and watch what you do. So Jake and Dana, that is just a snapshot in time here. Let's walk over to the Bernie Sanders supporters. You can see in the corner of the room the next round of counting is going to be underway. They seem to be pretty supportive of this. Certainly there are some other supporters from other campaigns who did indeed embrace that message, and they are indeed going for Bernie Sanders. So the Sanders campaign certainly the loudest tonight, but we do not know what the second alignment was. So it's important to know as we prepare for this evening, applause and enthusiasm certainly is important, but the votes are the most important thing. And I can also, let's just turn back around here to the Warren campaign. Certainly it's bigger than it was before. Certainly, at least my eyeball does not look like it's as big as the Sanders campaign, but we'll send it back to you, Jake and Dana, as we hear the counting that's underway right now.
All right, Jeff Zeleny at Drake University. A lot of people in that room obviously feeling the burn, as it were. And just a reminder, viewers, what's going on. First, there is a first count where everybody goes into the room and huddles with the people who are with the candidate they support. So Sanders over there, Warren over there, Buttigieg over there. Your group needs to reach a 15% threshold, 15% of all the people caucusing. If your group, your candidate, has not reached that threshold, then you are not viable. You've not reached a viability threshold. And that means that you have to go find someone else to join, or you can just go home. And a lot of people, and also what's new this year is the people that the candidate you commit to early on, you're locked in. You have to stay with that candidate. There's no swapping. Some people thought it was mischief-making kind of in the past when people would caucus with the Sanders supporters and then shift to Clinton or whatever.
And that's right. And actually, we're going to see that happening, not the mischief-making, but the shifting going on as we speak. I want to go to Sarah Seidner, who is in Arizona at one of the satellite caucuses that we've been watching. Sarah, what's going on there?
Have you all chosen they are all sitting, and I just want to give you an idea. Lots of folks here filling up the theater seats. They are all starting to talk to their captains, and they're about to start counting. They will do a head count first, but there have been speeches already that we have listened to, folks standing up and speaking for Biden and Warren and Buttigieg and Klobuchar, all very impassioned speeches here. They are now passing along the cards that they will also use to count the final count. But you are seeing people sit among the group that they have chosen to caucus for. That is what's happening here in Arizona, and everyone is just getting ready to get the counting started.
All right, Sarah Seidner in Queen Creek, Arizona. We're going to go now to St. Petersburg, Florida, where Diane Gallagher is. And just so you understand, this is the first year that the Iowa Democrats have done this. They're going to satellite offices where residents of Iowa, who just happen to not be in Iowa, are caucusing. Diane Gallagher, what's going on where you are?
3, 4, 5. Hey, Jake. Yeah, so right now they have just broken into their first preference candidates at this point. So we're going to walk around. Right now, they're busy electing who they want to sort of lead this particular candidate area. People are coming through and counting. We have been instructed by the leader here that we can't interview them while they're doing this. She wants to stay as by the book as possible because this is a new thing for them. She said she doesn't want the satellite caucuses to be upset or messed up in any sort of way. But you can see we've got those who are caucusing here sort of deciding this for Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar over there in the corner. We're standing right here by the Joe Biden people who want that across from us right now, and I'm going to get George to turn around. We've got Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, Andrew Yang in the corner here. Now, some people who were told that their candidate may not already be viable, they mentioned Tulsi Gabbard. We're told just to stay sitting here in the middle right now, and they're going to move forward afterward. We are doing things a little differently at this particular caucus. They voted to hear from the people who want to persuade you after they've already broken off into this, into their respective corners right now. So they've been moving around. The wheeling and dealing is going to be happening in the next few moments here. But again, they've talked to me about how important something like this is to them. We're late. This has taken about an hour and a half from when people first started catching up. And I want you to hear, you can see they're kind of, again, the political spirit that we've seen here.
Elect first female president.
And you can, again, just kind of get the experience and the vibe here in St. Petersburg, Florida. A lot of the people who are here spend much of their winter in Florida that we've spoken to, Jake, snowbirds or snowhawks, if you will. Watch out there, George, for that chair. And they've said that some of them haven't been able to go back and caucus. I've spoken to some other voters who say that they use frequent flyer miles or they just coughed it up and had to eat the cost of flying back there. Now, just because they haven't been able to fly, they've already seen. All right, here we go.
One more.
All right, and I'm going to send it back to you guys as they're still trying to figure this out before the speeches begin. But we're getting underway here in St. Petersburg, Florida for the first satellite caucus that they're experiencing.
All right, Diane Gallagher with some snowbirds from Iowa in St. Petersburg, Florida. We're going to squeeze in another quick break. We'll come back and cover more of this first round of caucusing in these satellite caucuses. Stay with us.
I got a weird
results from the satellite caucus at Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. Jeff Zeleny is there. How many participated Iowa voters, and what are the results?
Well, Wolf, we do have the results from this satellite caucus at the Drake Fieldhouse at Drake University, and these are the overall numbers. Take a look at these. Bernie Sanders winning this satellite caucus with a 67.7% of the people participating here. Elizabeth Warren coming in second in this satellite caucus with 32.4%. And it was interesting in the realignment, which we saw just a short time ago. 7 individual people here went to the Warren campaign.
3 individual people went to the Sanders campaign on realignment. So we do not know, of course, if that will be the center of the evening. But let's just walk through the field house here, and you can see the Bernie Sanders supporters are leaving now. A lot of them, as it turns out, were actual campaign workers because they do live in Des Moines. They have been working here for some long time. So you can hear behind here, and this, of course, also actually now is a minimum wage protest that has just happened spontaneously. We've seen them all across the country pushing for $15 minimum wage. But back to the caucus here, Wolf. So interesting. Again, not representative necessarily of what is going to be happening in just about an hour or so's time in nearly 1,700 locations across the state. But the process is the same. So things to watch tonight. Watch that second choice and watch that negotiation there. I am told by aides to the Buttigieg campaign and the Biden campaign and others that they are prepared to make those arguments to potentially other candidates who aren't viable. We should point out in this satellite caucus, at least, only one person showed up to support Joe Biden. He ended up going to Elizabeth Warren. So a bit of a caucus 101 lesson here, if you will, Wolf. A bit of a primer, if you will, for what we're going to see tonight. Wolf?
Let's go to Diane Gallagher right now. She's in St. Petersburg, Florida. Diane, there's a satellite caucus going on over there. What are you seeing?
Wolf, right now I'm going to let you take a listen in. They're going to take a listen in right now, Wolf. They are trying to convince people about their candidates right now. This is a man trying to convince other people to come and caucus for Joe Biden right now. I want you guys to take a listen.
The one who can take out Trump, and that has to happen.
So what they're doing right now is before they do this final count, they're trying to see if they can bring people over before the first count.
From the first round in St. Petersburg at the satellite caucus, Klobuchar 43.6%, Buttigieg 19.8%. But look at this, the next 3 below that 15% threshold that they need to be so-called viable. Biden 12.9%, Warren 10.9%, Sanders 6.9%. So there's going to be an effort now to convince those who were siding with Biden, Warren, Sanders to go ahead and support one of the viable candidates, Klobuchar or Buttigieg. We'll watch this very, very closely. Anderson, it's only just beginning.
Well, thanks very much. I want to talk with our panel here. You guys have been looking at kind of the age difference. I know you, Bakari, you earlier were talking about looking to see, are a lot of these caucus goers new-time caucus goers? Have they been before?
I think that's actually one of the larger numbers that we'll see tonight. I mean, those people who are first-time caucus goers, those people are likely bought into this process by Andrew Yang and more so Bernie Sanders. Yeah. And I think that that's going to have a huge impact. If this is and I think that you have to look at the turnout from 2008 and 2016. 2008 was the largest turnout you had. We had a young man named Barack Obama. And then in 2016, you still had a bit of a bump. So I think the turnout tonight falls somewhere in between that. But that number of first-time caucus goers is going to be very, very important. What we're seeing is the older the voter is, the more inclined it looks to see. You would think that they're Klobuchar voter or Biden voters. The younger the voter is, it's probably a Sanders voter or a Yang voter. And tonight always ends up with what I started. We don't know what's going to happen.
And it is worth noting, by the way, that Bernie Sanders has been open, to Bakari's point. Bernie Sanders has been open about the fact, look, he needs a big turnout. He needs non-traditional Democratic voters, because if it is small, certainly if it's below 2016, it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be 2008. If it's below 2016, that looks pretty good for Joe Biden. Joe Biden is the candidate of sort of these. He's got the Vilsack, the former governor and former first lady state. He's got 2 or 3 of the Congress people, right?
Yep.
So he's got the sort of what we traditionally look at as the institutional establishment players. The question is, how much can Bernie Sanders grow that into people that are never even going to consider Biden?
It's the perfect petri dish for what we talk about every cycle, which is how can young people really show up in their numbers? We know millennials are the largest voting bloc. Will they show up? The number is that 47% of these Iowa caucus goers are allegedly going to be under 50. But will they show up in those numbers? That's going to be super interesting. And can Bernie do something that has not been done before?
What I think is fascinating is the interpersonal dynamics in the room. Because of the age splits, You have young people talking to other young people, trying to maybe make them feel like, hey, come be with your own, age group. And because the age splits are so big, at the end of the night, I'd be fascinated to talk to some of the campaign workers to see if the interpersonal dynamics in the room acted like what we see in the polling, which is young people herding around certain candidates and older people herding around others.
And it's not just millennials. Like, I'm a millennial, but there's also this new burgeoning group of politically active Generation Z people. They're in high school, they're 17, you can vote in the caucuses at 17, but they're also in college now. And that is where Bernie Sanders does extremely well, organizing the college campuses. And again, at the end of the day, you said this, Governor, the #1 goal is to beat Donald Trump. And to beat Donald Trump, you're going to have to infuse this electorate with younger voters, voters of color, and it's going to have to take a lot of this. So this is going to be fun. I don't know.
But I love me some of those older voters, though. They are just fantastic.
I do too.
I'm not saying that you don't, but
I love the older voters too. This is we love both, and we're seeing a wide swath of the snowbirds that are slightly older.
Bernie also does. I mean, it doesn't only just have young voters, right? I mean, if you look at the last time around where he was neck and neck with Hillary, he didn't do that just winning young voters. I mean, he was winning voters that were working class people and other throughout the state. So I think that there is this real gap for sure, but I think he has an appeal that goes beyond that.
I would just one thing we'll learn too is it was 49.9 Clinton, 49.6 Sanders last time. The thing that's different there is it was if you didn't want Hillary, you got you could say uncommitted, I suppose, but you only had two options. Obviously, Bakari mentioned this earlier. You're talking about a gigantic field. Now, not all of them will be viable, but you have Buttigieg as a potential landing spot for some. Warren, I think, is a potential landing spot. So the question is, are these people, we know there's a block of Sanders people who, as Scott mentioned, are going to be with him no matter what. The issue is he going to be that choice for people who don't maybe want Biden, or are they going to split up?
Well, particularly with Elizabeth Warren. I mean, with Elizabeth Warren, if she fades, do all of her voters, you think go to Sanders?
I think that's a myth. I think that there is a big myth that's pervasive in the media and the Twitter sphere and everywhere else, that all Elizabeth Warren voters are Bernie Sanders voters and vice versa, and that's not the case. I think that she has voters who will go across the board. I think that it's not going to be a one-to-one split, and she's going to be a fascinating candidate to watch tonight.
And the other really interesting piece of information that came out this week was the number of Yang voters who will not vote for, who won't commit to voting for the Democrat in the general election. It's like 42%, a huge number. Whereas if you are in Elizabeth Warren's camp or Joe Biden's camp, it's like 90% or above agree to vote blue no matter who. So that's an interesting dynamic.
The dynamic between the Warren and the Sanders people is interesting because they are in some ways fishing off the same policy pier. But in a lot of ways, we're in a post-policy environment in which these elections are more determined by the gulfs we've been talking about. The age gulfs we see, the gender gap we see with Trump, the rural-urban gap we see. And so they're on the same policy pier, but is that the determinative factor tonight? Something I'd be looking at.
Coming up, we're going to have results from satellite caucuses in St. Petersburg, Florida, Queen Creek, Arizona, as our coverage of the Iowa caucuses continues after a quick break.
That'll make it easier for you to count when you are...
Welcome back to CNN's coverage of the Iowa Democratic presidential caucuses. I'm Jake Tapper in Des Moines with Dana Bash. As caucus results start to come in, we're going to break them down for you in several ways. For the first time, Iowa Democrats are reporting the results of the popular vote in 2 different rounds. So this is how it's going to work. In the first round, caucus goers declare their first choice candidate, Warren, Sanders, Biden, whomever. In the final round, voters are allowed to switch their support if their first choice doesn't get at least 15% support at that caucus. So we're going to be able to compare both rounds to see how the vote changed and how that may have helped the ultimate winner of that individual caucus. In the end, the winning candidate will be the one who gets the biggest share of the state delegates. State delegates are awarded based on the final round of votes. Again, the state delegates are what matter most. We're going to be watching them very closely all night long. And Dana, one of the things that's so interesting here is a number of the people, the number of the caucus goers, they're going to support candidates who don't meet that 15% threshold. So, and I'm just making it up now, a hypothetical. You would think, theoretically, okay, so let's say you're a Sanders person and your candidate doesn't make the threshold. Well, then maybe you're going to go to Liz Warren, who's also very progressive. But that's not necessarily how voters make these decisions.
It's really not. And it's funny, I was with my producer, Bridget Nolan, and we were at several events yesterday and talking to voters about this very thing. And just for example, we were at an Elizabeth Warren event, and we talked to people who said that they were Elizabeth Warren or Pete Buttigieg. We talked to a lot of people who said Elizabeth Warren or Amy Klobuchar, two people who consider themselves, Klobuchar and Buttigieg, on the more moderate side of the Democratic spectrum. So they had various reasons, but one maybe it's because that they wanted a female candidate. Another is just they just like the personalities. There's so many factors that go into the decision if the first candidate, the first choice, isn't viable.
And the other thing that that's interesting is we're going to be looking to this night about storylines, what narratives are coming out of the caucus. For example, 4 years ago, Ted Cruz won the Republican caucus, Hillary Clinton won the Democratic caucus, but there were such strong showings by the number twos, by Bernie Sanders for the Democrats and by Donald Trump for the Republicans, that their victories, Ted Cruz and Hillary Clinton, were important, but the surprisingly strong showing of Sanders and Trump frankly had like no organization at all, were really major storylines coming out of it, because a lot of this has to do with exceeding expectations.
So much of it has to do with that, which is why you were seeing, for example, the Biden campaign, more than I think any other campaign in the top tier, lowering expectations in a big way. I mean, they started doing that many, many months ago, not just for Iowa, but also New Hampshire. But you're absolutely right. What we saw in Iowa really did set the scene in 2016 for the rest of the campaign on both sides of the political aisle, and we're probably going to see that now. I believe we can go now to Sarah Seidner, because we want to talk about what exactly is going on as we speak. There are satellite caucuses. We've been discussing that. This is a new thing for the Iowa Democratic Party, trying to expand these caucuses beyond the actual state of Iowa. Sarah, you are in Queen Creek, Arizona. What is happening right now at that satellite caucus?
So we've gotten an initial count just of all of the people who are here, which is 162 people who showed up to caucus here. All of them Iowa residents who were here in Arizona. A few people here for just a couple of days, but they wanted to caucus, and so they're here. What's happening now is they are trying to see which candidate is viable. In other words, which candidate in this very caucus here has 15% of the vote, which is about 24 people. They told him if you have 24 people, your candidate is viable, and that means that you stay right where you are. If there are not enough people, then you either have to decide whether you stay another or that you go to another candidate's group. So what you're seeing here is people are counting off. I'm going to take you over a bit. People are literally counting off to show how many people are in a caucus. This is Biden's caucus right here. They have, you hear him say it there, 28 people. So that would mean that the Biden caucus is viable, that they have enough people so that they can, in the next round of counting, either attract more people who have a candidate that is not viable, that does not have 15% of the people who are here in this room, or people that do not want to, they can choose someone else, but you have to have a viable group, and that means you have to have, in this particular place, in this particular satellite caucus, 24 people out of 162, 15%. So,
Sarah, tell us more about some of the other groups, the other candidates. Sarah, tell us about some of the other viable candidates in the room. Obviously, former Vice President Joe Biden is one of them. Who else?
Yes. So right now they have not given those numbers yet, but as you look up and look at the crowd that is sitting here, I heard someone yell out enough people for Klobuchar, for example, but they are recounting to make absolutely sure they're counting people off. They have captains counting, and then they literally have people themselves counting. So that's what we're doing right now. But the Biden group's the only group so far that has officially said we have 29 people. We are viable. We are waiting for Buttigieg. We are waiting for Warren. Buttigieg is coming up just now. But so everyone's getting up. Buttigieg has enough. Just take a look there. This just gives you an idea of how they're doing it here inside this theater. Again, he clearly has 15% of the number of people here caucusing. And so they'll keep going like this until they figure it all out to see who's viable and who isn't, and then another count will happen. Jake?
All right, Sarah Seidner in Queen Creek, Arizona. Again, these are individuals at satellite caucuses. They have been pre-approved. They are Iowa Democrats. They live in Iowa, but maybe they spend their winters in Arizona or Florida, and that's why they're caucusing there. We're going to squeeze in another quick break. We'll be right back with more of CNN's coverage of the Iowa Democratic presidential caucuses. Stay with us.
Welcome back. We're covering the Iowa caucuses. Ryan Nobles is over at Bernie Sanders' headquarters with a very special guest. Ryan?
Yeah, that's right, Wolf. We are joined by Dr. Jane Sanders, the wife of presidential candidate Bernie Sanders. And Dr. Sanders, thank you so much for being here. I know you've been forced into duty as a result of Senator Sanders being involved in the Senate impeachment trial.
Yes.
Just give me your impression of where this campaign stands right now in the Iowa caucuses and what you expect tonight.
Well, it's been an honor, and I'm so grateful to the people of Iowa for their taking such interest in our democracy and really participating so fully. So it's been good. I'm excited. I'm hopeful. I'm nervous. So it all comes down to tonight.
I mean, you were here 4 years ago as well. Can you compare what it was like in 2016 to what it's like now?
And 4 years ago, Bernie was just getting introduced to the people, and I just kind of went and waved. This time, especially because of impeachment, I've been doing a number of events by myself and talking to people and taking questions and learning from them. It's been really exciting, and it's been, I think, more exhilarating. People are recognizing that Bernie's campaign is one of justice. He wants economic, racial, social, and environmental justice, and it seems to be resonating not just here in Iowa, but across the country. And I think they understand that he wants to improve their quality of life. So he came in as a known entity, and I could become more of a known entity in Iowa than I was last time.
Okay, so tell me what it's going to be like tonight. Where are you going to watch the returns? What will the mood and the atmosphere be like? Is Senator Sanders nervous on a night like tonight?
Well, you know, everybody is, I'm sure. We're going to watch it right here, and it depends totally on what the results are in terms of mood. So far, so good. And I think, we're hopeful.
Right. Well, tell me about that. Do you expect to win here tonight? It seems as though there's a lot of momentum and energy behind Senator Sanders' campaign. Will he come out with a victory tonight?
I can't predict. I think we saw 6,000 people just in the last couple of days. So the energy and the enthusiasm is there. Whether or not it totally depends on how many people come out to caucus. What's always been true in Bernie's elections is if the voter turnout is high, he does well. If it's low, he doesn't. So we're hoping that everybody takes it very seriously and right to the final moment and goes to caucus and votes for Bernie.
Okay, all right. Jane Sanders, thank you so much for joining us,
Thanks,
and good
Ryan.
luck to you and Senator Sanders tonight. We appreciate
Thank
it. All right, thanks. Wolf, we'll send it back to you now.
All right, thanks very much, and thank Dr. Sanders as well. Let's go to Queen Creek, Arizona right now. The first results are now coming in. Sarah Seidner, what are you learning?
We have the first results. There were a couple of really big cheers. I'm going to start off, we'll just do it in alphabetical order. I'm going to give you a scene. They are now going to start the second count, so I'll get you looking at the folks that are here in the theater who will be filling out those cards. Klobuchar by far wins this, 33.5%, a big number there. They hollered. And then Buttigieg is next with 24.68%, and then you have Biden with 18%, and then you have Warren. Now, everyone cheered when they heard the number that Warren got because they are just under 15.82%. Now, if you look at Sanders here, a very small number, 4.43%. Those are your leaderboards, if you will. Steyer got 1%, Bloomberg 1%. And there is still one person here who is uncommitted. So of all the 162 people, one person still uncommitted. But the big number here was Klobuchar. Back to you guys.
All right, thanks very much, Sarah Seidner. We're going to get the final results from Arizona, and 1 hour from now, the caucuses, 1,600 plus caucuses throughout the state of Iowa begin. Much more of our special coverage right after this.
Don't let them talk to you. They have to say.
Tonight, Iowans are taking part in one of the most unpredictable presidential caucuses ever. I'm Wolf Blitzer in the CNN Election Center. We're about an hour away from the main event when voters across Iowa declare their choice to be the Democratic presidential nominee. They have a crowded field to choose from. 11 candidates are in the race, but only a handful are considered competitive in this leadoff contest of 2020. Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren are in a close fight tonight. All of them eager to take on President Trump in the general election. We have cameras and correspondents inside key caucus sites across Iowa to bring you the results in real time. When the caucuses start statewide, we'll have our first chance to reveal which candidates are the early leaders based on our entrance poll. Let's go to Dana Bash first. She's over at the caucus site in Des Moines where they're lining up already. Dana?
That's right. You see the line here. We were watching satellite caucuses. This is the real deal. This is the original caucuses.
Excuse me, is everybody ready?
You see someone registering the people who are online. I want to take you actually over here. Jake, we see who you're with. Amy Klobuchar, you're a precinct captain.
Yes, I'm a precinct captain.
And so that means you have been trained in trying to get the people who are with you online to come over to Amy Klobuchar.
Correct. Yeah, we're working to get to the 15% viability threshold so that Amy's viable and we get some delegates.
And if you get to that 15% threshold, do you have a script to try to lure people who are with candidates who didn't reach that threshold and who are up for grabs in the second round?
Yeah, I'm just going to talk about how hard Amy's worked on this campaign. She was the only senator to come back during the impeachment trial to do an event. She had like 300 people in Council Bluffs. She's got the record of winning. She won 42 counties in Minnesota that Trump won.
You definitely got the message. Thank you so much. Thanks. We'll see you up there. We're going to keep moving here down the line. We met a couple of these people who just met online. Tell me your name again.
Heather.
Heather. And who are you here to caucus for?
Pete.
How about you?
I'm Justine. I'm here to caucus for Pete. Emma, here to caucus for Biden.
Okay, so when did you make up your mind?
A year ago.
Oh, wow.
Oh, actually this weekend.
This weekend?
Yeah.
Who are you deciding between?
Pete and Bernie.
So does that mean if, for some reason, Mayor Buttigieg is not viable in the beginning, you'll go for Bernie Sanders?
Yeah, exactly. I will. I decided on Friday.
Wow. And what led you to your decision?
I just want somebody who can beat Donald Trump, and I feel that Biden has the experience and the electability to do just that.
Who's your second choice?
Amy Klobuchar.
And why is that?
Because she wins, and everything she does is for the people, and I just really feel like she works for what the United States stands for.
And who's your second choice?
Bernie Sanders.
That's right, you just told me that. Who's your second choice?
Biden.
Yeah.
Yeah. He can get the job done, as we all know, but I'm really hoping Pete's viable tonight.
Have you ever been to a caucus before?
No, I'm actually from California, so my vote matters this year.
But you obviously live here now.
Yes,
okay.
yes,
okay.
Yep.
And what about you?
I'm from New York, so this is my first time caucusing, and same thing. I'm so excited. I'm a resident over at Children's Hospital here. So
okay. Thank you so much. We'll see you up there. And I want to just turn back around if you can. This is the line. People are starting to come in. They are being registered, as you see, because they have to not only say who they're going to caucus for eventually, but more importantly, as we've seen with the satellite caucuses, the people who are running this caucus have to know exactly how many people are here in order to get the percentages and to see who is viable at first, and then, of course, at the end to see who wins this caucus. Wolf.
All right, Dana, thanks very much. We'll get back to you. Let's go over to John King. They're just getting started a little bit less than an hour from now, about 1,600 plus caucuses begin. What are you going to be looking for?
It's kind of fun, right? Here we go. We're at the starting gate, and off we go. What are we looking for? Number one, turnout. Turnout. Will this come close to the record they achieved back in 2008? Will it be somewhere in between? That's one thing. If you look now, obviously, we don't have any votes counted yet. These are the candidates. They're in alphabetical order on the board early on. We'll break it out. What else are we looking for? You've seen Amy Klobuchar in some of these satellite caucuses do quite well. That's great, but it doesn't translate into big numbers. Can she translate that actually when you get into the ground here? One of the things her campaign says, she's a Democratic senator from Minnesota. That's above Iowa. Look up here. Just look at not just up here, but if she's going to have momentum, if there's an Iowa surprise, which sometimes happen, The Klobuchar campaign says this is where she's worked the hardest. This is where they know her the best. Take a look up there. That's one, maybe a bit of a subplot, but we'll see how it works out. Let's blank this out. Let's go back, Wolf. Remember 4 years ago, essentially a two-candidate race. That's what makes this different. Two-candidate race then, just to go back in time to 2008, a three-candidate race, really then. You see how the vote total split. This one thing to remember, Sanders had more than 49% of the delegates 4 years ago, right? Hillary Clinton had 30% way back in 2008. She placed third. More candidates, the vote will be spread out. That's one thing we're going to watch. How does that math work out? But to go back to the 2016 map, the light blue is Bernie Sanders, right? Does he lock up the progressive vote? Does he win in the areas he won in 2016? Or does the split with Elizabeth Warren have more an impact on his support? Over here in eastern Iowa, a great place to look for that. I'll just take this away and we look at some of these counties here. Iowa City, college campuses have always been a big source of Bernie Sanders' strength, but he's getting some competition there. Mayor Buttigieg says, I'm the new young, fresh face. So how does it play out here? Johnson County, one of the most progressive, if not the most progressive county in Iowa, certainly among the most. Let's watch that. A, who wins? B, what's the split? And C, what's the turnout? This will be a sign. Our young people coming out, we'll see that here. And you come out here and you move over here. Davenport is down here in Scott County again. Very important, was very close. See progressive versus establishment, if you want to frame the race that way. Let's see how that turns out this year here. Again, a place to watch turnout. And then as you move over, Ames, again, another college town here. You want to see how this turns out. It's Story County. You see here where Sanders more ran it up. Most of these, Iowa was really close last time. So in the places where he did run it up and get more delegates, we want to look at that to see if he's doing that again, getting a little gap from his opponents, if you can make a difference. The key question, does somebody win by a decent margin, or is this kind of a cluster? How many tickets out of Iowa? You just saw Dana in Des Moines. That's in Polk County down here. It's the largest part of the state. Obviously, the capital, the urban area. These suburbs, though, around Des Moines, really critical, just like the suburbs all across America in 2018, to the big, huge Democratic comeback in House races. Elizabeth Warren has spent a lot of time, not just in Des Moines, but across the state, going for suburban women, other suburban voters. So with so many candidates in the race, Wolf, I just think it's going to be fascinating, and it's fun.
It certainly is. Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, if you're one of them, what are you looking for in this state, 99 counties?
Well, number one, Mayor Buttigieg has spent a lot of time in the rural counties. A lot of time. And again, that was a lot of, you see, if you go back 4 years, a lot of split. In the northern part of the state here, rural counties, down here, rural coast, a lot of Iowa is rural farm country. You see the split back and forth between the two candidates because it was so hard fought. You can go back even to the 2008 race and you see, John Edwards. You see a lot more John Edwards in the rural areas down here. That's a place where Pete Buttigieg has spent a lot of time, but also where Joe Biden has tried, especially with older voters, to stress the electability message. I can best beat Donald Trump. Mayor Buttigieg just said, no, you don't need the experienced guy. You need a new, fresh face to beat Donald Trump. How does that play out, Wolf? That's one of the things we'll look at there. And again, if you're Joe Biden, I want to come back to 2016 just to show it. If you're Joe Biden and you're trying to get the Democratic establishment, one of the places to look is in the Des Moines area, in Polk County. That's where the state party is headquartered. That's where some of your labor unions are based, political organizations are based. If the establishment is going to rally around Biden, the Democratic establishment, this will be one place in Polk County where we should see some clues about that.
We certainly will. John King's Magic Wall is going to be very lively in the coming hours. David Chalian, you're going to be very busy as well. First of all, there are some new rules that are playing tonight.
Yeah, there are two key differences in tonight's Iowa caucuses than any previous Iowa caucuses. One, the rules change you're talking about. You know, Wolf, how it works. There are 2 rounds of voting. So people show up to these caucus sites, they express their initial preference of which candidate they want to back. A calculation is done in the room to determine which candidates are no longer viable. That means that for the most part, which candidates have not hit a 15% threshold and therefore are deemed not viable and no longer competitive. And then it is a moment in time where the candidates that are viable have the chance to try to woo some of those who were supporting candidates who are no longer viable into their corner. Here's the rules change. If you are with a viable candidate in the first round, you are locked in. You cannot change your vote. That used to not be the case. And there aren't multiple rounds of reallocation. It's just 2 rounds, the first vote and the final vote. So that's the rules change. Now, here's another factor. We're getting more information than we've ever gotten before. You remember the bitter battle between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton in 2016. One of the things that came out of that battle was a change in the rules. And Bernie Sanders fought really hard in getting the rules changed to allow the reporting of the popular vote. So as you're going to say all night long, state delegates, that's how you win the Iowa caucuses. The person who has the highest percentage of state delegates at the end of the night is going to be the winner of the Iowa caucuses. But think like the Electoral College and the popular vote in the general election in November. We are now, for the first time ever, going to see a popular vote total, both for the first round of voting and the final round of voting. And we've never seen that before. Now, it is not the metric that determines the winner, but we are going to learn how many people actually showed up to support these candidates.
They're lining up right now at more than 1,600 caucus sites throughout Iowa. We're going to get to some of them right after a quick break.
Posters. Yeah. I'm about to go on. Hi, I'm Jake Tapper, and I am in the Wells Fargo Arena. Normally, this is where the Wolves play basketball or the Wild play hockey, but right now, Des Moines 47, the precinct here, is about to caucus. This is a neighborhood they expect a lot of younger people. They're not sure how many people are going to turn out tonight, anywhere between 350 and 500. Already, caucus goers have started to come in. You can see a lot of them are wearing their team colors, wearing hats for Pete. Why are you hiding behind there, hiding over there? Tell me. So why you're here to caucus for Pete? You're an observer. You're here to caucus for Pete.
I like Pete.
You like Pete Buttigieg. This is the area right here where the Buttigieg people are gathering. What do you like about him?
I think he's very introspective, kind of in the same way that Robert Kennedy was in 1968. It's not just a bumper sticker answer, and I think we need more of that. We need some more compassion and love in this country instead of the hatred and division that Trump is known for.
Okay, so that's one Buttigieg caucus goer, and he's gathering here with the other Buttigieg folks, and then you're going to see people over here are for Bernie Sanders. You can see the feeling the burn over there with their signs and their hats. Tell me, why are you the whip for Bernie? Is that what this? What does that mean? What are you going to do?
I'm going to take account and just make sure that all the rules are followed.
And how do you think he's going to do here tonight? Do you think he's going to, I assume you think he's going to meet the viability threshold of 15%. Who do you think is the biggest competitor to Sanders here?
Probably Warren, I would say.
Why do you think that?
Well, I saw some early numbers from the satellite caucus, and Biden was our only real competitor, and he's not doing very well. So I think Warren and Peter are our only real competition here.
All right, Warren and Buttigieg, the competition for Sanders. And the Warren people, nobody's really filled in over there. Whoop. Anyway, so more people are filling in, and we're going to keep bringing you updates as to when everyone starts to gather, when they do their first vote, when they do their second vote. But now we're going to go to Cedar Rapids to another caucus location.
Hello there, Jake. This is Miguel Marquez in Cedar Rapids at the Veterans Memorial Building. In the basement of the Veterans Memorial Building here, it is starting to fill up after all the meetings, all the events, all that money spent on ads, and all those handshakes, millions of them. This is where the rubber meets the road. Voters are now checking in here. I want to give you guys a sense of the room here. So they've said, in no uncertain terms, they only want 2 signs per campaign. So over here you have the Joe Biden area where they will eventually gather. They hope to be viable tonight. Somebody, Mike Bloomberg did not campaign here, but one of his supporters came in and put up a little Mike Bloomberg sign right over here. So he has at least an area where they can caucus. Pete Buttigieg has an area right here where he can caucus, where his supporters can caucus, and then Amy Klobuchar's folks are there. The Bernie Sanders folks are back there. And here is Elizabeth Warren. I mean, she has the most impressive area, clearly a siren call to get people out here. Talking to voters here, there is a mixture of relief and terror that Iowans must make the right choice tonight, they say, to beat Donald Trump in November. Wolf?
All right, Miguel, thanks. We'll get back to you. Brian Todd is over in the western part of Iowa right now. Sioux City, what do you see over there, Brian?
Wolf, this place is really starting to buzz. This is Precinct 6 in Sioux City. People filing in here. This is the only entrance they can come in. They're going to check in right here and register. First-time registrations are over here. And I'm going to take you down here where a lot of the action is going to be. We're going to turn to your right and walk down here with me, guys, if you can. This is where people are starting to gather to hear the main rules of the evening from the precinct chair, Steve Warnstadt. He's going to be up here in a short time, giving people the lay of the land, the rules and everything. Then they're going to section off, and you'll see people gathering in the corners like we do. I want to talk to one gentleman here, an Elizabeth Warren supporter. George, hi. This is George Boykin. You're an Elizabeth Warren supporter. George, you told me you're a veteran caucus goer.
Yes, I am.
Why Elizabeth Warren and why now?
Well, I think Elizabeth Warren represents, our country, will represent our country well. She has a good plan, I think, for Medicare and Medicaid. She has a good educational plan. I think that she talked about, reforming our judicial and law enforcement system for people. And she also talked about bringing this country back together, which is critical importance to me.
Now, your wife tipped me off that you just committed to Elizabeth Warren, this afternoon?
Yes, this afternoon.
What drove that change so suddenly?
Well, she's been working hard for a number of years, in the Senate, and also as a private citizen. She's just not a newcomer to this.
All right.
And that's why I like her, because she is committed. And she can win this thing, and I know she can if people get behind her.
All right, George, thank you very much. Good luck tonight. This is where they're going to gather. Then they're going to section off, Wolf, and that's where the action is really going to get interesting tonight, and we'll see how the dynamic changes. If somebody's not viable, where they're going, we're going to bring that to you live in real time.
The caucuses start in about 40 minutes or so. Brian, thanks very much. Anderson, lots going on.
There certainly is. I'm here with the panel. Van Jones, there's no predicting what's going to happen tonight.
No.
There have been polls, there's talk, there's expectations.
No,
so don't do it, Van.
So therefore I say, no, it's nuts. I mean, who would have thought that we would be in a situation, we have two flavors of moderates, two flavors of progressives. It's a complete jump ball. But I think if there's anything that's interesting is how many times Bernie Sanders, written off, underestimated, assumed that he was going to be easily eclipsed by Elizabeth Warren. We're just kind of waiting for the handoff. It hasn't happened yet. And he has labor endorsements, a youth with him. So I think tonight, if after all of the obits written for Bernie Sanders, he's standing in the top one or two, a lot of us got a lot of humble pie to eat today. That's what I think.
I think tonight it comes down, we say ground game a lot. And I think when we use the words, we forget that ground game means actual people. Like, these are actual people who are very excited about their candidates. And as long as we have been talking about electability, we haven't really married that to enthusiasm. I want a candidate to be our nominee who has a really enthusiastic group of people behind them. And tonight we're going to get to see which one of those folks have that. I think that's what's going to matter in November. How many people can you get out? How many people can you get to knock the doors, to actually go from door to door talking to their neighbors? This is one of the best possible examples of who's really got that ground game going.
Alexandra Rojas, you were an aide to Bernie Sanders, 2016.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly right. I mean, I think the reality is that the majority of America right now wants a political revolution or big structural change. And that means that progressive ideas are popular. It's where the center of energy is within the Democratic Party. And I think Bernie and Elizabeth Warren's strength in being able to show that it's not just about moderation, but it's also about motivation is really going to come out to bear in the caucuses tonight.
Governor, I mean, that is the battle going on in the Democratic Party. I mean, is it revolution? Is it some other way?
Well, I tried to make the point, this is not the battle soul of the Democratic Party. This is about beating Donald Trump. This country cannot face 4 more years of Donald Trump. And I think for a lot of the caucus goers tonight, who has that best opportunity to take Trump down? We can't have 4 more years of Donald Trump. So, my guess is we're going to have, 2 or 3 folks muddled at the top. It should be a very good night for Bernie. He did very well in 2016 in Iowa. He should do very well in New Hampshire. But I remind you, these first 4 contests are only about 4% of the delegates. We've got to get through this process, and then we go to March 3rd. 14 states, big part of the delegates will be chosen. A lot of communities of color will be voting that day. So, I don't put too much emphasis on Iowa. I think it's a very white state. It's a very liberal state. I want to see a Democrat who can put the whole coalition together. And if Bernie does well tonight, then he's got to reach out to all elements of this party and bring everybody together. This is about beating Donald Trump. Let's be plain and simple. And Democrats, and this hasn't been an overly vicious primary. You think of 2012 with the Republicans with Mitt Romney and Huckabee. You think of 16 with Trump and Rubio and all the stuff that went on. You know, this has been a pretty good primary. And I think the Democrats have been very well behaved, but keep our eye on the ball. Let's not destroy ourselves in this process. Let's unify.
Well, you also have to think of this moment in American political history, which is quite stunning. I mean, we've just gone through 2 weeks of impeachment in the Senate. The president's been impeached in the House, is not likely to be convicted in the Senate, but this has gone on and on and on for 2 weeks now. The president's going to give his State of the Union address tomorrow night and talk about the state of the nation as being great. And now you have a Democratic Party that is divided. It is the people asking for revolution against the people saying, you know what, I'd rather be relieved, revolution or relief. I just want a little stability. I just want to calm down. And I'm not quite sure that revolution may be the way for me to go right now because I want to beat Donald Trump.
I got to get another break in. We're going to come back. We're going to have more with the panelists. We've got a long night ahead of us. We're an exciting night. We're watching as more Iowans arrive at caucus sites all across the state. Soon the doors close, the voting begins, and you will see it all happen straight ahead.
Hi, it's Jake Tapper with CNN, and I'm standing in the Wells Fargo Arena where Des Moines 47, Precinct 47, the caucus goers are here, and they're starting to get together. You can see the Sanders people over here. You can see the Buttigieg people over there. Something else I want to show you, there's a group over there behind the rope line. They're here with the ACLU, and they are here to protest the fact that felons in Iowa do not have voting rights. And so there's a gentleman over there who's an ex-felon, and he's here. He can't participate in the caucus process, and the ACLU is trying to make sure that candidates and, of course, their supporters commit to restoring rights to former felons. But while we're talking about caucus goers, let's go to Dana Bash, who is here somewhere with an undecided Democratic caucus goer. Dana?
I tell them. That's right, Jake. I'm here with Anna and John and Caitlin, thank you. And the three of them, all three of you, caucus for Bernie Sanders in 2016. You, Anna, are on the fence.
I am. I'm between Bernie and Elizabeth Warren.
Right? I mean, time's ticking. What's going to do it for you?
I just need to hear one compelling reason that really gets me over that line.
Why are you so torn?
I think that Bernie has a special place in my heart. I did caucus for him last time. I know a lot about him. He's very consistent. Elizabeth Warren is a woman, and I would love a woman president, and she's really smart, and she's shown that she could grow in her positions, and I feel like I want to make the best choice, and I don't yet know what that is.
Okay, and John, you are wearing a Bernie Sanders sticker. You said you think you're caucusing for him, but it was a really recent decision. Yeah, I decided earlier today. I was basically doing some research online, and Bernie and Warren are similar in so many ways, but it really came down to Bernie's been consistent since he was young, since he was younger than I am, so that kind of pushed me over the edge, but I'd be perfectly happy with Warren as well. And what about you, Caitlin?
I decided probably about a month ago, though I've been considering Bernie for a long time. I was kind of going back and forth on electability, but decided to vote for my values as opposed to what I think the rest of the country is going to do. So I'm excited to caucus for Bernie.
Okay, thank you so much. And we're going to find you, Anna, afterwards and see and watch you as you do this and see which way you go and who compels you. Jake, over to you.
Dana, you need to send John over to here. This is the Sanders corner right here. You can see this very enthusiastic group of voters, a lot of young voters who are here feeling the burn, ready to go caucus for their man. But let's go now to Jason Carroll. He's in North Liberty, Iowa. Jason?
That's right, Jake, at Liberty High School, where things are just getting underway. They're expecting anywhere between 700 and 800 people, and this is the first step right here. This is where folks who are coming here, you've got to stop here, you've got to register, make sure your name is on the list. I've been talking to Jerry. Jerry, how are things been looking so far all night?
Great. It's great. Things are going really smoothly. It's a huge crowd. We're getting lots of new registrations and changed registrations, and so far so good.
All right, and obviously, what's going to happen, all the big news is going to take place in this auditorium once people are allowed to file inside. And a lot of folks are going to be looking for voters like Michaela Krause. She is undecided, a first-time caucuser. Just give us a sense of who you're thinking about, you're leaning towards tonight.
I'm keeping an open mind when I go in there, but I am leaning a little bit towards Pete. I'm so sorry.
The reason why she's saying that is because standing next to her is Suzanne, obviously a Biden supporter. She's already getting at her, trying to convince her, even before she gets inside, why Biden should be her candidate.
So my strategy is to tell people why Biden is my candidate. It's because I love it that he has relationships with world leaders. He can use those relationships day one. He's got relationships with senators. He can use those relationships day one. He can actually create change right away, and now is an urgent time for change.
Michaela, you buying it?
I mean, I love her passion.
But did she convince you?
Yeah, I think that is needed right now. She makes a great point.
Okay, but as it stands right now, first choice and second choice.
Probably I'm still leaning a little bit towards Pete, but I mean, Biden's up there for sure. Yeah.
All right, caucusing already taking place. Good effort there, Susan, good effort. Caucusing already taking place, Jake, as you can see, even before they get inside the auditorium. We're going to bring that to you live as soon as it happens.
All right, great. Jason Carroll in North Liberty, Iowa, and I'm sitting here with my boy Creighton. He's a Liz Warren supporter. I'm sitting with the Liz Warren group right now. I'm going to get out of here before the caucuses start. They're going to actually start in about half an hour. We're going to squeeze in one more quick break. We'll be right back.
Only 23 minutes to go until the Iowa caucuses begin throughout the state. David Chalian is joining us right now with an early look at what we're calling the entrance poll results. Tell us what we're seeing. These aren't exit polls. These are entrance polls.
That's exactly right, Wolf. We're talking to voters, to caucus goers, as they're heading into the caucus sites. And I really want to stress before we show you any numbers, I want to be clear with you and the audience, this is a very early conversation as early voters are walking in. It may not be representative of everyone that shows up in the caucuses. These were the first people to show up. They may not look like the total universe of the electorate, but it is the early information about what the electorate could possibly look like tonight that we want to bring to our viewers. So I want to first show you a set of numbers that we asked people about. When did you make up your mind in this contest? We know Iowa has a history of having late deciders. That is not necessarily the case here, you see. We asked just today, 9% of the caucus goers heading into the polls tell us that it was just today. But look at this number down here, Wolf, 56%. More than half of these early arrivers at the caucus sites are telling us they decided more than a month ago, before January. We also asked, have you ever attended a caucus before? As you know, first-time caucus goers, this was how Barack Obama won the caucuses in 2008. So we wanted to get a gauge, and you see here, 35%. Again, this will change. These numbers are going to change throughout the night. This is our very early look. And among these early arrivers at the caucus sites, 35%, about a third, are telling us they're a first-time attendee. This number in 2016 was 44%, and in 2008 was 57%. As you know, Bernie Sanders' strategy is to really bring a lot of new people into the process. I'm sure the Sanders camp is going to want to see this number grow throughout the night. And then finally, we checked in with caucus goers about the ultimate question we've been asking all year long in Iowa and nationally. Are you looking for somebody who agrees with you on the issues or somebody who can beat Donald Trump? It's not even close. 63% of these early arrivers that we talk to as they're going into the caucuses tell us they are looking for somebody who can defeat Donald Trump far more than the 35% who say they're looking for somebody who they agree with on the issues. But come back to me throughout the night, because these numbers will shift as we get more and more interviews done as people get to the caucuses.
It's a very early look at these entrance poll results. David, thanks very much. John King, what do you think based on what we heard from David?
Well, that last point, where we've seen this nationally, but to see it by that margin, again, early in Iowa, the final number could change. But that Iowa Democrats, no matter who they're for, Most of them want to beat Trump. Most of them want to beat Trump. Now, that happens among Democrats nationally, but it's personal in Iowa because remember the history. Iowa Democrats launched Barack Obama in 2008. It was the big surprise. He beat Hillary Clinton, and off he went. And then President Trump flipped. One of the things we'll look at tonight, Obama carried Iowa twice. Then President Trump carried it last time. One of the things we'll look at tonight are how do the Democrats perform in these lighter gray counties? There's 31 of them. 99 counties in Iowa total. 31 of them flipped. They voted twice for Obama and then flip to Donald Trump. That's hard to do, right? You think this county supported a Democrat 2 times in a row. Why did they flip? Some of them by large margins. So these ones here, that's one of the things we will look at. Do Democrats in these counties who feel it personally, is turnout higher? Do they have one candidate, or are they split among the field? 31 so-called pivot counties, that's one of the things we'll look at tonight. This is the first of the Democratic contests. But, Wolf, we're also thinking about, is Iowa giving us any clues about as we move on toward the general election? So it's just to look at now. It'll be an early clue, as David Shelley noted. A couple other things to look at as we go through. It's all gray right now because we don't have any results yet, obviously. But we can look at counties. We can break it down and see that counties that are in gray, those are the highest educated counties with the highest population with a college degree in Iowa. Is there a difference between these higher educated counties and the counties where you have more people who have a high school education? Just something to look at to see if you have an educational split among the Democrats voting tonight. And if you just come back, I just want to take you to another one here. You can look at Iowa doesn't have any huge cities per se. Des Moines is the biggest city, but how the Census Bureau describes urban areas. You see these urban areas here, and the rest of the state is rural. Is there a difference between how people are voting in more urban areas with city centers and out in the rural areas? Because of the diversity in Iowa population-wise, we want to look at that, the diversity of the regions. And you can go back and look at this. If you look at it through the 2016 model here and come into the Democrats, in this here, you see the split. One of the things with the two candidates who were so evenly divided in the chase for delegates statewide, it's not really a clear pattern in the sense when it comes to urban, suburban, urban, rural, as you look through that. So that's another thing we'll look at as we go through it. I just don't want to come back to this because Iowa's one of the states I study as you go through these counties, these Trump flip counties. Let me take that off and come out here. And you watch how this happened. This will go out of the way in a minute. This is how it worked out. This is how it worked out in the Democratic primary in these 31 counties. Again, a fairly even split between Clinton and Sanders. But if you look at the presidential election, it's just a stunning flip in a state. And you watch this as you try to look at the general election map. Can the Democrats, after Donald Trump made history winning election, can they get it back? If you look at this now, this is the 2016 general election. And it is just stunning when you look. They're mostly in this part of the state. You see a few over here. Just when you go back and realize it was all blue. It was not a either or. It was all blue then. It was all blue then. And in 2016, it went there. So as the vote total comes in tonight, as you come back into 2020 here, in these counties, again, really interested. Democrats take it personally. They want to get their state back in November. Do they turn out in big numbers? I think that's a giant question tonight. And then who does that benefit?
You know, 4 years ago, it was basically a two-person race in Iowa, you know, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, but there are a lot more people running this time.
And so right now we have no results yet, which is why you see we don't expect Michael Bloomberg to do anything in Iowa tonight. He's not competing in the first 4 contests. Tulsi Gabbard also has spent her focus in New Hampshire, not in Iowa. But right now, these candidates on our board are listed alphabetically. Tom Steyer down here. You see Sanders and Warren down low. Andrew Yang down low. Andrew Yang's been pushing in Iowa. Can he surprise? We'll see as we go through the results tonight. But they're alphabetically here right now. But to your point, if you go back to 2016, again, Governor O'Malley was pretty much out of the race by then. This was a Clinton-Sanders race. Let me get out of these counties here, clear this, just so we get back to the full state map. Look at just, I mean, it is stunning, and that was the big surprise, right? No one thought Bernie Sanders could come that close in Iowa. So with two-man race, you get essentially 50-50 in the delegate split because it was so fierce and tight. If you go back to this one, a lot of people forget, Secretary Clinton was third, just barely. But if you go back to Iowa 2008, also a reminder as we think about tonight, who gets how many tickets out of Iowa? Does somebody win clearly? Barack Obama used Iowa as a springboard to the nomination and the presidency. He didn't really win by a lot, 4 points. 4 points, 5 points, depending on how you, among delegates. This is about, it's not points. I shouldn't say points. This is delegates. Remember, this is about delegates tonight in Iowa. But this is a pretty close race. Right. And yet it was the springboard for Obama because it was the surprise and he got the big ticket out. We'll see if we get a surprise.
Iowa's an interesting state because you look at the states that border Iowa, you get a little sense of the nature of the state. Minnesota to the north. Take a look at this. Wisconsin and Illinois to the east. Missouri to the south, Nebraska, South Dakota to the west. And so it's a fascinating little state.
This is the 2016 general election map. You think of Iowa, you don't think of it as a giant electoral powerhouse, right? We think about California, which will be blue. We think about Florida, which was red in 2016 and seems to be trending red. But these little states like Iowa and New Hampshire, where we go next, small in the Electoral College, could actually matter in a very, very close race. And again, you're right. If you look in the neighborhood, this used to be a more blue area. Again, this was the magic of the Trump win. Pennsylvania is outside the circle. Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, if you go back to 2012, you see a lot more blue. This is the challenge for the Democrats. This has been a big message from Klobuchar and from Buttigieg and from Biden as well. But the two Midwestern candidates, the mayor from Indiana, the senator from Minnesota, have said, we know this area. These are our people. This is the Midwest. This is where we grew up. This is where we've won our races. We'll see what happens tonight. Does that impact Iowans? When you talk to the voters, I was out there this weekend, some of them, yes. Some of them say Amy Klobuchar gets us. She has a better chance here. Mayor Buttigieg gets us. He'll have a better chance here. Others, think Bernie Sanders won Michigan in the primary last time. They think he's the blue-collar guy. Others say experience for Joe Biden. But if you go back through it, Wolf, just watch in here. You mentioned Iowa. Iowa's right here. Blue, 2016, a lot of red. We start 2020 tonight to see whether that map changes.
To back up your point about how important Iowa potentially is for a Democratic presidential nominee, 7 of the last 9 Democratic nominees won Iowa.
Won Iowa. So often, Ted Cruz won Iowa for the Republicans. Donald Trump was the nominee. So Mike Huckabee won Iowa once, didn't go on. Mitt Romney went on to be the nominee. So it's not always the case when it comes to the Republicans. Actually, that was the Santorum Romney year. But Mike Huckabee won Iowa once in the election before that. So it's not always the case in Republicans. In Democratic politics, Iowa has, especially in recent history,
much more important for Democrats than Republicans.
Iowa's the springboard.
That's why we're watching it as closely as we are right now. We're only 13 minutes away from the start of more than 1,600 caucuses throughout the state of Iowa. We'll be right back. All right, it's getting crowded at caucus sites where Iowans are casting the first votes in the 2020 presidential race. The action begins just minutes from now when Iowa Democrats declare their choice to challenge President Trump. We have cameras and reporters inside multiple locations to cover the voting and the results live. Once the caucuses start, we'll also have our first chance to reveal which candidates are the early leaders based on our entrance poll. Let's go to David Chalian with a little preview. David, you're getting more new information from our entrance poll.
Yeah, some of those folks you just showed in those caucus sites may be people we talked to on the way in. That's how we conduct this entrance poll. Before I show you the numbers, Wolf, I just want to stress, these are early numbers. These will change throughout the night as more and more interviews are conducted. So the folks who arrived early, well, they may not be representative of the overall electorate, so we shouldn't take that we now understand how the night's going to go. We do not. What we should do, though, is look at these numbers to get a little sense of what's on the minds of voters as they're heading into these caucus sites. We asked them about the issues, and I think this confirms what we've seen all year long. Healthcare, healthcare, healthcare. 40% of Democratic caucus goers say healthcare was the biggest, most important issue for them. And we also asked, okay, let's go deeper. Do you support the notion of getting rid of private insurance for a publicly government-run plan? Look at this. 59%, again, these are early numbers, these will probably change, but 59% of the early interviews that we did as folks were entering in, they support that Medicare for All option. That is a huge number. 38% oppose the idea of a government-run program. That may not look like how America necessarily feels, but it is certainly looking like how Iowa Democrats who attend these caucuses tonight are thinking about this major issue of health care going in, and that's probably welcome news to Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, who support that policy position, Wolf.
I'm sure it is. David, thanks very much. Let's check in with Jake and Dana. They're both at caucus sites in Iowa. Jake, first to you.
Wolf, so there are hundreds and hundreds of people. It looks as though turnout here at Precinct 47 in Des Moines may exceed expectations, and the groups are starting to congeal. Big turnout for the Sanders people there. Big turnout for the Warren people just over there next to them. Big turnout for the Buttigieg people to my left over here. But this is where the rubber meets the road, right? Because, there isn't a big turnout for some other candidates, and while they haven't convened the caucus yet, it's really not such a strong showing over here for Team Klobuchar, for Amy Klobuchar. I have with me one of Amy Klobuchar's supporters, Jordan. Jordan,
we don't know what's going to happen. Maybe you'll make the threshold, but you got to be already thinking about maybe she won't.
Well, I came into that knowing it was a possibility, but I wanted to fight the good fight because she's a scrappy fighter, and I want to be a scrappy fighter for her, you know?
She'd be proud of you, but what do you do if after that first vote you don't make the threshold? You're going to go into one of these camps? Who do you think is your second choice?
I'm torn between Warren and Yang. We had a Yang canvasser crash our Super Bowl party yesterday, and they made a very persuasive case. And they kind of have my heartstrings too, but they probably won't make this threshold either, so then I'll switch to Warren.
And Warren is a lot more progressive than Klobuchar. Klobuchar is portraying herself as more of a moderate, but some people might say that, boy, I don't really see what they have in common.
Oh, honestly, I don't think the platforms are that different when it comes down to what can get done. I think maybe Amy Klobuchar is maybe a little more realistic, but I'm willing to shoot for the sky. And I know this time around I really wanted to vote for a woman too, so that's voting with my heart.
All right, well, thank you so much, and good luck tonight. I hope it turns out well for you. We're going to go now to Dana Bash, who is elsewhere in this huge throng of Democratic caucus goers. Dana?
And Jake, you know, we are minutes away, literally minutes away from this caucus starting, and I have a group of neighbors here who live just across the Des Moines River. Many of you have not decided, and we're so close. Roxanne, you're still not sure where you're going to go?
I'm not sure, no. I'm leaning towards Biden or Warren. My first choice doesn't look like she's going to be viable.
Who's that?
Amy Klobuchar.
So are you even going to try?
I'm going to go there. I've caucused in the past by moving around a lot, and this year that's not an option.
Because you're going to get locked in the first round?
Locked in, yeah.
Okay.
So if I already see she's not viable, there's no reason to go there and move.
And you're also not sure where you're going to go.
Correct. I think we must be kind of in the same boat, because I too would support Amy, but it does not look like she's going to be viable. So, but I could support any of these folks. So,
how are you going to make your decision? I mean, you're just a couple minutes away from having to walk someplace.
Oh, isn't that? Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
I mean, what's going to sway you?
I'll probably go with my first instinct,
which is
go with Amy, and then. Yeah.
And you're wearing. You guys are together. You're wearing your
Amy, yes.
Yeah. And what if she's not viable? Then what are you going to do?
One of the places they're going, either Warren or Biden.
And I know you two who are married, you're wearing an Elizabeth Warren sticker, but you just decided last night because your husband convinced you?
Yes, he did. I couldn't decide, and so he made a case for Elizabeth Warren, and I said, sold. And here I am.
I'm supporting Elizabeth Warren because I think she's strong on corruption and special interests, and I think she'll take that message to Washington, D.C., and I think that she can stand in a debate with Trump toe-to-toe.
Are you guys going to work your neighbors here?
They've heard us.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you. We're going to go over to Tom Foreman now at one of the biggest caucus sites here in Iowa in Grinnell. Tom.
Yeah, this is at Grinnell College. Is not only one of the biggest, but getting bigger by the moment. They're expecting somewhere around 1,000 people here, and I think they very easily surpass this. And look at this group right here. This is the Bernie group. It's so big that, in fact, that middle section right there with all those folks in it, that was the Joe Biden section, and they actually moved the Joe Biden section because they didn't have room for all the Bernie supporters that are showing up here. So Senator Sanders getting a lot of support here. But here's an important thing I want you to bear in mind. I've talked to voters from all different camps here, and this has happened when I've talked to every one of them. Let me ask you very quickly. You're here for Bernie tonight. Is there any candidate in this room that you will not support if Senator Sanders is not the nominee?
Regardless of whether or not Bernie is elected or nominated, I'll be voting for the Democratic candidate.
And you'll show up?
Absolutely.
You all feel that way?
I agree.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah? Well, let's move down the way here, because a short while ago I spoke to one of the Biden supporters before they got pushed out of here, and they said the same thing. Now, the largest group, other than the one we're seeing right now, and this was all supposed to be Biden here, it has all been washed away by Sanders support, and you can see they're out of room again. The last part down here, this is all the Warren supporters. And let me ask Colleen here. Colleen, same question to you.
Sure.
If Elizabeth Warren is not the candidate, will you vote for anybody else in this room next fall?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would happily vote for anyone else in this room.
we have a bigger job to concentrate on. We'll unify.
Wolf, that's the message I'm hearing from every single camp here, even those who may not be viable. They will vote for the Democrat this fall, and they're saying it with a lot of energy. Wolf?
All right, Tom, we're approaching, only about 90 seconds until the start of these caucuses. John King, it's going to get pretty exciting fairly soon.
Right. All those voters talking about if their candidate, guy or gal, doesn't win tonight or doesn't get nominated in November, they'll be there in November in the general election, but it's about to get feisty in all of those rooms as the first contest of the year begins. You bring out Iowa. It is blank gray right now. This is our first night. We're finally going to fill this in. You see the names in alphabetical order here. You got a long list of Democratic candidates, but we think 4 or 5 are going to be the big performers in Iowa. Some things to look for, and let's use the 2016 map. Again, this is more of a two-way race. We'll have more colors in the map right here. A couple things to look for. You just saw in Des Moines there questions of whether Amy Klobuchar, the senator from Minnesota, would be viable. Well, Minnesota's right here, so is she viable up here? If she's not viable down here in Des Moines, is she getting support closer to home? That's one thing we'll look for early on. Do we have 5 candidates vying for the race tonight in Iowa, or do we just have 4? You come out of that. Let's blank that out. If you look at 2016, I'll use a little red over here. Progressive in eastern Iowa, Wolf. Bernie Sanders ran it up there 4 years ago. Can he do it again, or is he in a fight and a split with Elizabeth Warren? In just moments, we'll start seeing that first preference in those caucuses. Then they'll reorganize after that, and here we go.
We certainly are only seconds away from the start of the Iowa caucuses, and for the first time, we can reveal the top choices of voters as they went into the caucus sites. Their choices could change once the voting begins, but right now, these are the early leaders based on our entrance poll in this key race alert. All right, here are the early leaders based on our CNN entrance poll in the Democratic caucuses. Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Biden, Buttigieg, Sanders, Warren. They are the early leaders. Remember, these are the early results from our entrance poll of voters on their way in to the caucuses. They could still change their minds once they get inside, so this may not necessarily reflect the ultimate winner. David Chalian is breaking down the entrance poll results for us. David?
Well, one of the things that we're looking at is sort of the ideological makeup of the electorate tonight, the Democratic caucus-going electorate. 26% identified themselves as very liberal, 40% somewhat liberal, 33% moderate, and only 1%, as you might imagine, consider themselves conservative. This is about what the electorate looked like ideologically in 2016. Take a look among moderate voters and how they split. As you might suspect, Joe Biden, again, in these early entrance poll results, these numbers will change throughout the night. He's at 34% among the moderates, followed by Buttigieg, Klobuchar, and then, of course, Sanders and Warren. The more progressive candidates are down at the bottom of this list. How about the other side of the spectrum, the very liberal voters? How are they splitting among the candidates? Well, you'll see here there you go, the very liberal, you saw there for a moment. Among very liberal, Sanders got 41% of their vote, 26% for Warren, 13% for Buttigieg, 6% for Klobuchar. So you see, among the very liberal, which is that 26% portion of the electorate, if we just looked at the very liberal, you would see that that is a Sanders category running away right now. Again, caution, these are early numbers of people coming into the caucuses to tell us where they are. These numbers will change throughout the night. But Biden is winning the moderate crowd at the moment, and Sanders is winning that very liberal crowd of the electorate.
Very interesting indeed. All right, David, thank you very much. Let's go over to Jeff Zeleny. Is at one of these large caucuses in Des Moines right now. Set the scene for us where you are, Jeff.
Well, for the last half hour or even more than that, there have been, I would estimate, a couple hundred people in line waiting to register to vote. Now, they are finally just about through here. We are just a couple moments before this caucus is going to begin. So a lot of new voters with stickers of all kinds, Warren, Sanders, Buttigieg. But one thing is very interesting to keep an eye on tonight, Wolf. I found a supporter here for Cory Booker. Ireland. Obviously, Cory Booker is not in the race anymore. Yes. Are you waiting to be wooed tonight?
I am. You know, I came here with my intention to caucus for Cory first round, and second round, I'm ready to be influenced, whoever can tell me into it.
I've been watching you, and other candidates have been coming up to you all night, so we'll keep an eye on you tonight to see where you go. But, Wolf, we can tell you, if you see the crowd behind me here, they are filling in, without question, a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters. He won this precinct 4 years ago. It is Drake University and the surrounding area here in Des Moines, but a lot of Elizabeth Warren supporters, Pete Buttigieg as well. So this will be one of the signs of strength. It's a sizable crowd, but it's about to begin here, and everyone has checked in, so not super turnout as some expected. So most officials believe it'll be about what it was 12 years ago.
Do you have a sense, Jeff, who's generating, at least based on what you can see, clearly not very scientific, but just a sense of who's doing the best so far?
Well, there's no question that there is enthusiasm for Bernie Sanders, as we've seen on college campuses everywhere. One surprise to me, Wolf, not many Andrew Yang people here. And, of course, the Yang supporters were counting on some college support. So we'll be looking to them to see, if they're not viable, where they go for second choice. But Warren, Sanders, Buttigieg, certainly in this Des Moines precinct here, a mix of Drake University and others. So that will be a key test here tonight, Wolf.
And can you see if there's a significant Biden support?
We can, if you can come with me, if our photojournalist Andy Buck can come with me. There actually was, as Tom Foreman was saying in Grinnell, there was an entire Biden segment. Now it looks to be reduced to just a very small corner here. I'll walk around this a little bit more. There was just a little bit of a Biden sign right here. So certainly not a robust turnout. But we should note, this is one precinct on a college campus, certainly not Joe Biden's strength as we've seen him all across the state. Certainly more older voters have tuned into him. So this will be an interesting test between the Warren campaign and the Sanders campaign and the Buttigieg campaign at this precinct alone, Wolf.
And it's just beginning now. They're going to be making some statements. Stand by. We're going to get back to you. Yeah. Brian Todd is over in a different part of the state in Sioux City for us. What are you seeing where you are, Brian?
Okay, Wolf, well, there was a lot of noise here, a lot of energy here a moment ago. There's a bit of a hush around the room right now because it's about to gavel in. The precinct chair, Steve Warnstadt, is closing the doors over here. He's about to gavel in this precinct, explain the rules to them. He's going to do it from up here, and then people are going to start to section off. Now, they're all in one place right now. I mean, we picked up a lot of Buttigieg supporters here. A lot of independents have showed up, so their dynamic is going to be very interesting to watch, who they're going to section off to. I'm going to show you how they're going to do it. As soon as the rules are explained, and he's going up to the podium right now, he is going to then tell people, okay, break off into your groups. Come on down here. Joel, our photojournalist, is going to go with me here. Then they're going to break off by alphabetical order. Biden, Bloomberg, Buttigieg, they're all going to be over here. And then by alphabetical order, they will circle around the room, and he will put the people in their groups according to alphabetical order. And then, then we're going to start the first round of counting. That's where the rubber meets the road, Wolf. That's where you're going to see maybe some people, again, break off after that round and go to someone else for the second round, Wolf.
We'll see what's happening. Let's go to Dana Bash. She's in Des Moines at Caucus site as well. Dana?
That's right. Well, let me give you a sort of a sense of what's happening right now. If you look behind me, you see them. They're all ready to go. These are the people who are caucusing for Joe Biden. They're enthusiastic, but frankly, a smaller number so far. There's about 25 minutes until we're going to get a total sense of the number, which means we'll get a sense of how many people need to be in each camp to be viable. This is also a smaller group, but party. That's Andrew Yang's group here. Even smaller, Tom Steyer. There you go. A supporter for Tom Steyer here in Polk County. This is probably so far, at least over on this side of the room, the largest area. That's for Elizabeth Warren. You see there are a lot of people here who are ready to caucus for Elizabeth Warren. At least they're wearing the stickers, they're holding the signs. It doesn't mean that they're actually, wedded to that, but it's certainly where they came or what they came intending to do. This is the whole Warren area. And if you come down here, there's a whole long corridor down there, and down at the other side where you saw Jake earlier, Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, and the rest of the candidates are down there. People have started to go into their corners, into the areas where they want to be in order to actually formally caucus for their candidates. They don't have to fully be there yet. And remember, we were talking to you earlier and talking to voters earlier. who don't know where they're going to go yet. So there's still a lot of tension here as they prepare to actually go to their very first round and make their commitment, Wolf.
And a lot of uncertainty. We got to stress that right now. We don't know what's going to happen at all. Dana, thanks very much. Let's go to Grinnell, Iowa. That's about 60 miles east of Des Moines. It's one of the largest caucus sites. Tom Foreman is on the scene for us. We see a very nice crowd behind you, Tom.
Yeah, and this is a place in this college town where the progressive wing of the party is running very strong tonight. If you look down there and come this way, at least 2/3 of this is all Bernie Sanders support, right up to the stairs right here. Originally, some of that was supposed to be Joe Biden. This section is all Elizabeth Warren support. So they're spilling over and taking up more space in every way than they thought. Even people up top there filling in. And this started very early on. It hasn't stopped. It continues to grow. By comparison, come over here to this side. This is where you have Pete Buttigieg with really a quite respectable showing here, but nothing like what you're seeing over on the other side. Next to him, this is Andrew Yang's area. This is the Yang area over here. Very strong support there. People very enthusiastic, as you can see. Steyer over here, Gabbard, Bennett, Bloomberg. And here is the Biden group, which was originally on the other side. Let me ask you a question. You had a different position. You got kind of pushed over here by the Bernie people, being so many of them. Disheartened, encouraged? What are you thinking?
Hey, we're still encouraged. We're going to go for Joe. We're going to do this. We're going to get the support we need.
You think so?
Yes, I'm sure.
What about you?
Well, this is the way to go. I don't think Bernie can win a national election.
Yeah, that's a lot of the talk that we hear around here. People saying that one of their concerns is that progressive wing over there may not play as well when you get beyond here. And then down here is the Klobuchar section also hoping to come out. What we don't have a whole lot of, though, is right over here, the uncommitted group. There are a few, but even the ones I talked to said they think before tonight is over, they're going to be committed as they look at the turnout here, already at easily 1,000 people, which is what they expected, and still perhaps not quite yet finished growing. Wolf?
Nice crowd over there in Grinnell, Iowa. Tom, we'll get back to you. Jeff Zeleny is back in Des Moines. Jeff, walk us through the crowd right now. What are we seeing? Support for various candidates.
Well, if this is getting underway right now, you can see behind me here the precinct chair is starting. But when we look at the crowd here, so many Bernie Sanders supporters, as you can see, going through the way here. And as we keep walking down, so many Elizabeth Warren supporters as well as we keep walking here. There are hundreds and hundreds here. They're expecting potentially up to 600 people at this caucus, which would be one of the largest in Des Moines. So again, these Elizabeth Warren supporters, a smaller section of Joe Biden here, as you can see. But again, this is a college campus, not his core group of people, but the Pete Buttigieg crowd on this side, just eyeballing it, Wolf. Certainly it seems to me that they are, if not competitive, they may be more than the others on the other side, the senators. So that is what we're watching here, are the supporters. And of course, second choice, so important. Every campaign is represented here. It's about to get underway. The candidates' representatives are going to be speaking, and then soon they'll be out here on the floor. And once again, they'll be divided up by hurdles, those track hurdles here. So it's going to be very interesting here, Wolf, with hundreds of people on the floor. Of course, the horse trading begins in the second round. Wolf?
All right, Jeff, we'll get back to you. Stand by. Anderson, this is the moment of truth for a lot of Democrats in Iowa.
And a lot of questions still remain here with the panel. David Axelrod, when you see those people, it's fascinating to see it up close, to actually see how it all works.
Yeah, well, this is my 10th Iowa caucuses from a distance this time as a reporter or as a participant, which not only brands me as a really old person, but as someone who has experienced a lot. And it is an incredible thing to see these people, neighbors, haggling, debating, discussing. We saw earlier the one woman saying, well, I'm really for Pete, and apologizing to the Biden person. Iowans are very nice. But I want to get back to this discussion that was being had earlier about sort of beating Trump being the most important thing, revolution being the most important thing. This electability issue is a really interesting issue because, in my experience, people, they tend to believe the candidate they like is the most electable candidate. It's not like they say, you know, I really like this person better, but I'm going for him or her because she's the most electable. The Bernie people think he's the most electable because they think he can speak to these disaffected working-class voters and excite young people in a way that Hillary Clinton did not. The Biden people think he can be the guy who can reach into some of these white working class areas that were lost to Democrats in 2016. But you know, this is all theory, and I think people rationalize their vote based on who they like. So I'm not sure exactly what that number
Biden
means.
has made that his campaign.
His whole campaign.
His whole campaign is
His whole campaign. So let's talk about Biden for a second. I think this is a big night for Joe Biden. He needs to finish near the top. He doesn't necessarily have to win, but he has to be competitive. If he were to slip to third or fourth place, that is a bad scenario for him, and that is what, you know, a Michael Bloomberg is sitting there and watching.
You think he needs to be in the top two?
I think he does.
Absolutely.
I think he does.
Because he's been saying he's electable. He's been saying
he's the putative front runner.
That he's, you know, he's a winner. I mean,
and he's out of money. So
he's also broke. I mean, the thing about it is, you would think that a sitting vice president, who's been sitting at the top of the polls this long, would have something called money.
Yes, which he does not.
Which he does not. And so you can imagine a situation tonight. If he does really well, you're going to see money move to him. But if he stalls out, if he's third or fourth tonight, then he's going to have a big problem going forward because he's going to run out of cash.
Well,
a friend of mine said, if you know, you're the front runner, you're Superman, and if you can't lift the railroad train, it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
And so things start to unravel for him if he does poorly here, poorly in New Hampshire.
Michael Smerconish, I haven't heard from you.
My thought is that Iowa is always about expectations, and the drill is set a low bar, exceed it, proclaim victory. That's what everybody will do tonight, but it'll be compounded by, and I keep paying close attention to every time David Chalian goes over the rules and the way in which they've changed, because I think that there's a strong prospect that at the end of the night there'll be multiple winners, or at least several individuals who are all laying claim to victory, especially because of that rule change.
And you know, the Biden people have really tried to inoculate themselves against all these scenarios that you're talking about, Van, which is what if he comes in third or fourth, and they say, well, this is the beginning, not the end. They believe they have a firewall, although they won't use that word, in South Carolina. They just don't want it to be the beginning of the end.
Yeah, they don't want to test that firewall.
A lot of the South Carolina is there because, sorry, go ahead. No, I was going to say, the other thing about Iowa is that it's often full of surprises, right? We saw that in 2008. We saw that in 2016 with Sanders doing much stronger and better than people thought he would. What will be the surprises tonight? Does Warren do much better than we thought she would do going into this? She sort of plateaued. She had a great fall. Buttigieg sort of had plateaued as well. Does he meet expectation, exceed expectation? I think the same question for Biden, too. He's kind of going into this with his campaign lowering expectations. Can he exceed them?
I got to get a break in. Coming back, we're going to go to these caucuses. We'll see the results live. We'll be right back.
More than 1,600 caucuses. They are now underway in Iowa. We're watching them all very, very closely. David Chalian is joining us once again right now. You're taking a very close look at the entrance poll information we're getting.
That's right, Wolf, and we asked voters about their age as they were going in to identify how the different age groups, which is a huge dividing line in this Democratic nomination race, how they're splitting up. First of all, look at the overall electorate here by age. Young people, 17 to 29, they're 20% of the electorate, about where they were in 2016, maybe a slight uptick. But look down here, 65 and older, 34%. Those folks going into the caucuses that we talked to are 65 and older. That's about 6 points higher than it was in 2016. This may be a little bit of an older electorate, though these are early numbers and will change. Well, let's take a look at how they split. Let's look at those older voters, that 65 and over crowd. That is a Joe Biden category. He is winning 37% of the older crowd. Pete Buttigieg is 15 points behind him. That is a pretty large margin of victory among these older voters for Biden. But now I want to show you the younger voters, because this is Bernie Sanders territory. Look at this. 51% of the 17 to 29-year-olds are with Bernie Sanders here. That is 35 points higher than the next closest competitor, Pete Buttigieg, the 38-year-old former mayor of South Bend, getting 16% of the young voters. Bernie Sanders got such a huge margin here among younger voters that even though they haven't yet turned out in greater numbers, that is going to help him tonight as all the votes start coming in.
David, thanks very much. And 17-year-olds can vote in the Iowa caucuses if they're going to be 18 by the time of the November election. Let's go to Brian Todd. He's out in Sioux City right now for us in the western part of the state. What do you see over there, Brian?
Wolf, a crucial moment is at hand here in Precinct 6. They are passing out the presidential preference cards. These are the two precinct heads here, the precinct chair and the precinct secretary. They are passing out presidential preference cards. He has given them strict instructions to not write on their cards until they start sectioning off. Come on down here, Joel. We're going to show as they finish passing out these cards. They're almost done with it, so the crucial moment is at hand for the first round. They are about to start sectioning off into the candidates' groups, and they're going to go by alphabetical order. If you want to pan to your left here, Joe Biden's group is going to be over here. You see the signs over there. Pete Buttigieg is going to be just to the right, and then they're going to go by alphabetical order, depending on the candidate's name, through every section of the room. That's when we're going to get our first sense of who's got the most critical support in the first round. And that's just going to be an estimate because, of course, that's when people are going to, candidates, volunteers are going to get their chance to make their pitch. If your candidate isn't viable, to come over to their side. They're going to give maybe about 15, 20 minutes for that to happen. And then the crucial second round count will begin. But they just finished now passing out these presidential preference cards. Any second now, he's going to give the signal, and they're going to section off into various corners of the room. He is signaling his precinct secretary there. They're about ready to go. So we're going to see very soon where the critical mass is for these candidates in the room here, Wolf.
We'll come back to you fairly soon, Brian. Thank you very much. Let's check back with Dana. She's in Des Moines. Give us a sense of how big of a crowd at the caucus where you are right now. How big of a crowd is it?
It's big. This is where Jake and I are, and I will tell you, if you come over here, these are, they're called presidential preference cards. These are crucial. This is how people vote. Ari, you're here, you're a volunteer helping to lead this. You have 350 here, but we're on hold because you had to send for more.
That's right, absolutely. We have more people than we were expecting, which is a beautiful problem to have.
And so you got about 200 extra?
I believe so.
You sent for 200?
We sent for 200 extra. That's what we're waiting for, yeah.
And this was based on past turnout here. That's why they had 350. And if you kind of look around here, you can see just if, you know, by the naked eye, looking at the numbers, it goes down this hall. There are definitely many more than 350 people here. Jake, I know you're somewhere in this crowd. I'll toss it to you.
Hey, Dana. Yeah, so right now we're just kind of getting our best guess as to who is going to do well in this first round of this caucus, Des Moines 47. And there are big crowds for Elizabeth Warren. This is the Warren group right here. Past her is the Sanders group. That's big. Past that one is the Buttigieg group. That's big. There are clearly a number of groups that are not going to meet the 15% eligibility threshold. One thing that is interesting, I want to point out, is that, you know, caucuses are all about passion. Who can get their supporters to the caucuses to advocate for them for hours on a winter night in February? This is the Yang gang right here. And they are a bigger gang than the Biden gang. It's very clear. This is just one precinct. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, and we're not sure what the eligibility threshold is going to be for either one of them. But it is interesting that in downtown Des Moines, right now, at this one precinct, Yang is representing better than an 8-year vice president. We're going to squeeze in another quick break. We'll be right back, and we're going to have some results. Stay with us.
And I'm scared that in my lifetime, our planet will become unlivable. How to win.
Elizabeth Warren's at a caucus site trying to convince voters to support her. Let's listen in.
Can bring our party together. We need all Democrats united. I'm someone who treats all our Democrats with respect. I reach out and I run on core Democratic values that we can all support.
All right, we're getting some preliminary results right now. The first results in the Iowa caucuses. Let's go to Grinnell College, Grinnell, Iowa. Tom Foreman is watching. This is the first round. Tom, I take it some of the numbers are already there.
Yeah, the numbers are already here, Wolf. People are not moving a lot, a few here and there, but widen out here and take a look at what we see already. At the moment, the big winner of the moment would be Bernie Sanders over here. Look at those numbers for him. He is currently showing at about 44, 45% of the vote here. That's those first two sections of bleachers here. Down here is the Warren vote, another big winner at the moment. It's all preliminary. She's currently right on the doorstep of 30%, 28.6%, something like that. But let's swing over to the other side and look what's happening over here. On the other side, you have a bunch of other candidates, including Joe Biden, who currently are showing no indication that they can reach the threshold level, which means they have to get to enough voters that they have that 15%. Pete Buttigieg has a pretty good showing there, but probably not enough to get him in if you look at the numbers. Now remember, this is just this site, and just moments ago, Wolf, we saw people running across the floor here to join in with some of these camps, to huge applause and cheers from people in these camps who wanted them with them on the first big vote here. But if this continues this way, and again, it's very preliminary, Wolf, things could change, but it's hard to see how numbers this big, percentages this big, could change in a way that these two aren't the big winners on this college campus at this caucus tonight. And it's also relatively hard to see how anybody over on this other side reaches the threshold of 15% to be viable. If that is the case after this first vote, and then they go through the second vote, the realignment, if that remains the case, then the only people getting delegates out of this would be Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Again, one of the biggest caucuses in the state. This is a college campus. It is a very progressive area. Everyone here will tell you that. So they're not terribly surprised by that, but they may be surprised by the numbers here on this particular caucus night.
Yeah, well, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, they're clearly above that 15% threshold. Hold that shot for us. Make sure your photojournalist keeps that shot for us. I want to walk over to David Chalian. David, we're looking very closely at, remember, this is Grinnell College in Grinnell, Iowa. Presumably a lot of liberal college students and others, academics, not necessarily reflective of the whole state.
Certainly not. You just saw what we found in the entrance polls of how Bernie Sanders does with young people. So it's not surprising that in a college campus that he would be doing rather well, which is what you're seeing there. But remember, Wolf, you're seeing 45.7%, 45.7% going to Bernie Sanders. Well, as you said, almost half. Again, it's a college campus. We saw among 17 to 29-year-olds, he was at 51% of the vote. I mean, he was winning overwhelmingly. So it makes sense. I just want to stress, what you're seeing right now is that first round of voting. If this is how that first round sort of settles out, you see that Pete Buttigieg and Andrew Yang and Joe Biden are not going to be viable in this caucus site.
They're not
hitting that 15% threshold. And so what's going to happen is, but that's a handful of supporters over there, obviously not the majority in the room, but then are they going to go to Warren? Are they going to go to Sanders? Are they going to leave? Those are their choices, basically. And do Buttigieg and Yang and Biden supporters, do they find comfort anywhere? Does Yang feel simpatico with Sanders? Is Buttigieg supporters a little more in line with Warren? You look to see that. But this is not something that should be thought of as meaningful to what the statewide results will be. This is Bernie Sanders, a hero to young people, especially in Iowa, among Iowa Democrats, doing really well among young Iowa Democrats in a college town. This is one caucus out of more than 1,600 caucuses. It's a big one. It's an important one, but it's only one. Right. And so you can't. All it is meaningful for is what's happening in that room. You can't assume, just because it's a big caucus site, that what we're seeing there with Bernie Sanders' big support is somehow the same what he's going to have statewide. It's one of nearly 1,700 sites, and all that is representative of is what's happening in that room in this moment. And we'll see where some of those voters go if their candidate doesn't have viability. And if he can get those young voters out across the state, then you can start saying how well Sanders made it. All right, let's go back to Brian Todd over in Sioux City. What do you see over there, Brian?
Okay, Wolf, they just divided up into the sections here, and we're getting a real good sense of who may be viable and who maybe, where the votes may be siphoning off to other candidates. This is the Biden section. They just let up a cheer here because they think that they're viable. But again, we don't have the estimates yet. All right, but now we're going to come down here. Here's the Buttigieg section. They just told me they believe that they've got enough numbers here to be viable. But again, not the official count for the first round is not in yet. But take a look. This is the Amy Klobuchar section. It's a little touch and go for them as to whether they're going to be viable, so we have to keep an eye on them. Are they going to go? Where are these people going to go in the second round? How are the pitches going to be made? Because after this first round of the count, each candidate's representatives are going to be able to come over to places like this and make their pitch to these people to come to their side. So we're going to be watching that closely too. Now, let's take a look over here. Right now, the biggest section we've seen are the Bernie Sanders supporters right here. They're obviously they've coalesced. They believe they've got viable numbers here. And again, the rules say that once you vote for a viable candidate, you're locked in. You can't change. There they go. Very excited. A lot of energy for the Bernie Sanders people. Now, another candidate to watch over here. There's the precinct chair crossing in front of me here. He's a busy man tonight. These are the Elizabeth Warren people here, keeping a close eye. And what's interesting here, Wolf, is that they're in good proximity to the Andrew Yang crowd over here. Now, the Yang crowd is a smaller one, we think, so we have to keep an eye on them. If he's not viable, there's going to be a lot of pitches for these folks to go to either Warren, Biden, Buttigieg, Sanders. It's a pretty exciting moment right here.
Certainly is, Brian. Stand by. We'll get back to you. We're watching the caucuses all over the state of Iowa. Much more right after this. This is Iowa. They are now underway. Let's check in with Brian Todd in Sioux City for us. Brian, seems to be a little excitement where you are.
Real excitement, Wolf. This is the precinct secretary, Ernie Colt.
23.
Here's what he's doing.
For Buttigieg.
He has just counted the Buttigieg section here, 23 people. Now, if that's the final count for this section, then Buttigieg is viable, if that's the count. Now, they're going to verify all that. We're going to verify all that. Ernie Colt here is about to go to the next section. Ernie, we're going to, looks like Klobuchar, right?
Yes.
And he's going to start counting. He tells people to raise their hands. When he counts them, they drop their hands. I'm not going to get in your way. You go, Ernie.
I am actually caucusing for Amy.
Oh, so you cannot do this. Steve is going to come over here. All right, that's one of the rules here. Since Ernie is caucusing for Amy Klobuchar, and we'll show you her supporters over here. Okay, they're excited. They think they've got a shot here. Since he's caucusing for Klobuchar, he cannot be the one who counts under the rules. He's going to bring the precinct chair over here. And the precinct chair is up on the podium over there, writing down some numbers. He's going to hurry over here in a second so that he can count the Buttigieg section, because under the rules, the secretary can't do that. So the precinct chair, Wolf, is going to come here and count the Buttigieg section. Now, what's interesting here is count the Klobuchar section right here. They just counted the Buttigieg and Biden sections. And if those estimates turn out to be final for the first round, they could be viable, but again, we don't know that yet because we've not confirmed the results. All right, now watch. Here's the precinct chair, Steve Warnstadt, counting.
4, 5. I counted you. 6.
People have to drop
7.
Their hands
8,
once they're counted.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25.
Excitement here for the Amy Klobuchar section because they've counted, you heard the count, 25, and again, this is an estimate. We're going to give you the final estimates later, but they're excited here. You guys are excited because they could be viable. Looks like they are right now. And he's just calling out the Klobuchar count now. Now we're about to go to the Bernie Sanders section where there's a lot less drama because it looks like a pretty solid number here. And Ernie is about to count here. Everybody's got to raise their hand.
Your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25,
He's just crossed
26,
the viability threshold
27,
here.
28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42.
Okay. There's the count for the Bernie Sanders section.
42.
And now what they're going to try to do between the first and second rounds. Well, wait, let's first, he's going to call that out to the precinct chair.
Bernie Sanders, 4-2.
42. Sanders?
42.
42.
Bernie Sanders, a strong showing here in Precinct 6, Wolf. And we're going to see what happens between the first and second round to see if they can bring over some possible Andrew Yang or other supporters who are not going to be viable.
Brian, which candidates are maybe missing, or do we have the results of all the candidates so far?
We do not. Come on this way, guys. He's going to the Elizabeth Warren section now, is what I have to tell you. No, not all the candidates are represented here. We have not seen anyone for Michael Bloomberg. We have not seen anyone for Michael Bennett. We have not seen anyone for Tulsi Gabbard.
Well, what about Elizabeth Warren? Has Elizabeth Warren, Brian, been counted?
No, she's about to be counted right now. Wolf, I'm going to take you over here right now where she's being counted. Looks like she's got a strong showing, and here's Ernie Colt doing the count. Let me get closer.
10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 30.
He's going to call it out to the precinct chair.
Elizabeth Warren, 30.
Elizabeth Warren has 30.
That may be doing it for the count here for the first round, Wolf. So at this point, we're going to start to give you some result estimates here.
The viable groups are Biden, Buttigieg, Klobuchar, Sanders, and Warren. Those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups will remain viable and are going to be awarded delegates. At this point, we will allow those that are non-viable to engage with the groups that are viable. The viable groups may engage with the groups that are non-viable so that we reach a consensus and complete the second alignment. So at this point, groups should be engaging the non-viable. How long do we have now? You have 20 minutes, or hopefully not longer, but as long as it takes. But let's go 20 minutes, given that we don't have that many non-viable groups. So proceed.
Okay, well, so they're going to start to what the viable candidates groups are. All right, let's show you who won the first round first. Okay, here are the numbers. The 5 viable candidates: Biden, Buttigieg, Klobuchar, Sanders, and Warren. Only 2 non-viable candidates, Tom Steyer and Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang, I got to say, a little more numbers there than we thought he would get here, because we didn't anticipate very many for him at all here, but he's got 10 voters. Now, they are going to be crucial. I'm going to show you where they are. Come on over here, Joel. Here are the Andrew Yang supporters right over here, okay? We're going to keep a watch on them closely. They got decent numbers. The candidates groups are going to start to come and try to woo these people over to their side for the second round, Wolf.
All right, stand by. We'll get those numbers for the second round, the final round, see where those non-viable candidates who voted for the non-viable candidates, where they wind up. Let's go to Jeff Zeleny. He's in Des Moines at a huge caucus site as well. What are you seeing over there?
Wolf, we are indeed. We're at the 38th precinct in Des Moines, which is on the campus of Drake University, so a mix of students and adults. Now, you can see over here the bleachers are essentially empty. Those were full. The reason they're empty? Watch this. They have all started to divide into preference groups. We have Andrew Yang supporters here. Some Pete Buttigieg supporters are still coming through. Look at the size of this Elizabeth Warren crowd. Go row by row here. If her crowd is not the biggest, it is certainly among the biggest. We're going to let the officials do the official count, but this is certainly one of the biggest. And a lot of those new people who were registering to vote had Warren stickers on, so keep an eye on that. Look across here to the Pete Buttigieg crowd. This also is very big. As we walk through here, lined up, and it's a mix of students. It's a mix of older adults, and we're still just trying to file in here. But one more thing, Wolf, we do have to show you. Take a look at this. This crowd is for Joe Biden. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 or so. So again, this is a college campus. He's not expected to do well here. This is not his base. Come over here and look at Bernie Sanders. Row by row by row, there are dozens upon dozens, likely a few hundred here. They were thinking about 500 total in this whole precinct, Wolf. So the counting is going to begin fairly soon. And what is going to happen in that? This is very interesting. These supporters are counted by their rivals. There's a team of counters. So the people who will count the Bernie Sanders supporters are precinct captains from other campaigns. So it's a bit of the honesty system here. People are counting the other people's votes, and it's a mix of a team. So that's about to get underway here. And just to give you a sense of the scope of this is a practice field. Before the voting began here, the track and field team was out here doing pole vaulting, running, and other things. So we're in a very large field. So it's about to get very interesting, because it looks to me like, just eyeballing it, at least 3 campaigns will be viable: Sanders, Warren, and Buttigieg. Again, that's not official, but just eyeballing it, it's what it looks like. Possibly Andrew Yang, and the others look to be up for grabs. So that will be interesting once the convincing and the persuasion begins, Wolf.
Yeah, remember the college, a lot of college students here at Drake University in Des Moines, similar to Grinnell College out in Grinnell. Similar results, at least so far, that we're seeing. David Chalian, you're getting some significant information from our entrance poll, people walking in to the caucuses and giving us some answers.
Yeah, that's right, Wolf. We talked a little bit ago about how health care was the most important issue for voters heading in. At least 41% of Democratic caucus goers heading into the caucuses tonight said it was the issue that mattered most to them, far away the #1 issue. So we did a deeper dive about those voters. So what about that 41% of the electorate? How did they split? Look at this. Bernie Sanders with 24% of them, but Pete Buttigieg with 23% of them. These two candidates who have very different views on health care are splitting these health care voters. We also want to take a look about those voters that told us they oppose Medicare for all. They don't want a government-run system. It's about 36% of the electorate. Well, look at this. Biden and Buttigieg, the two candidates who have not been supportive of Medicare for all, followed by Amy Klobuchar, also not supportive of it. You could see that health care appeal, their position to not join Medicare for all, to not get on board with that, has helped them win these voters, a little bit more than a third of the electorate, to their side because of their position, Wolf.
David, thank you very much. So the Iowa caucuses, they are really underway. The first results coming up very, very soon. Anderson, over to you.
Yeah, we've been watching it closely with our panel. Vin Jones, what sticks out to you?
Well, I mean, that whole thing right there with Pete. You know, what's interesting about Pete, this really, to me, feels make or break for Pete. Listen, Biden would love to win this, but he's got his firewall, he says, in North Carolina.
South Carolina.
In South Carolina. You know, certainly, you know, other people would like to win it. Pete's whole rationale has been, I can get these kind of voters on my side. These are my people. If he comes up really short, I think it's really, really tough for him. But if, you know, looking at what you're seeing, at least with the entrance polls, if he comes up strong, if Biden slips really badly and Pete slips in, his entire strategy pays off tonight.
Yeah, he did. He's put all the chips on the table on Iowa. Both he and Elizabeth Warren invested deeply in this state, and they're sort of locked in races within the race. One set for primacy among progressives, and I think it's very important for Buttigieg to finish ahead of Biden if he's going to make some claim to move forward as a credible candidate here. So there's a lot a lot at stake here.
Buttigieg is really the only candidate who's come out and said and been so direct about it. I have to win. I need to not win, but I have to do well here or forget about it. Yeah. And if you look at the entrance poll results, the early ones, David and I have been kind of poring over them. He seems to be someone who has a broad appeal to older voters and to younger voters.
Yeah, he's pitching from these different
urban
places.
And rural. Yeah. And so he seems to have succeeded to a degree. I mean, who knows?
We'll see.
Who knows? But he really is somebody who seems to have impressed a lot of people in very different groups in Iowa.
Can this be kind of a launching point for him? I mean, everybody talks about Obama in 2008, and he did well in South Carolina subsequently. Buttigieg obviously doing really poorly right now in South Carolina. But listen, if he comes out stronger today, you might see some movement in terms of him expanding his coalition, because it has largely been white. He hasn't typically done well with any young voters of any race, really. It's really sort of older voters who see him as sort of a nice grandson or something like that. You've got to kind of expand that to do much better.
Passion gets rewarded tonight. This asks a lot of people to come out. I mean, we're enjoying this. We love this. It's exciting. But for these folks in Iowa, they've got to come out and commit an evening to doing it. I was taken by that entrance survey that said that 56% decided before January. So they've been hardcore for quite some time. And what's gone on, at least for roughly half of them, in the last couple of weeks really hasn't mattered because they've already been set in their ways.
I think Buttigieg and Warren are in similar positions, that they need to be in a top cluster, whatever that cluster is. If third is really close to second, then they can be there. If third is way down, then that's going to make everybody look askance. I was very nervous for Sanders because the expectations were set so high for him going into tonight. So far, things look good for his folks, but I think that he really needed to come out on top of this one. Biden, I'm equally nervous for, because his whole rationale is electability. And I think that firewall in South Carolina is there because he is perceived as the candidate who can win. If he comes in fourth, that firewall can go somewhere else.
But you know, something about Bernie Sanders, Jess, is that he has a very committed base, and they're going to stick with him, and he is raising money every month. The thing that drives people out of these races is they run out of money. And one of the dangers for Joe Biden is if he's seen as flagging here, he's having a very hard time raising money, and that won't help. But Bernie has a renewable source of revenue. I think for Elizabeth Warren, the question is if he as seen as the primary progressive candidate, does she continue to raise the money she needs in the long term to go on?
Governor, I mean, it's pretty stunning that Vice President Biden is having such financial problems. And for a guy who's sitting vice president under Barack Obama.
Yeah, he wasn't successful on the online like the other candidates were. He went the old traditional way, went out and got the $2,800 contributions. And once you get it once, you can't give it again. But, you know, the online base generally goes to the more progressive, more left. They were on the issues. They appealed more that what Bernie was talking about, Elizabeth was talking about. Pete was new, young, energetic. And that is going to be the big challenge. If he doesn't have a good night tonight, where does he go find that new money? And as I keep saying, once we finish those 4 contests, March 3rd, potentially it's a $100 million day. I mean, you're talking 14 states, 2 territories.
Or as Bloomberg says, lunch money.
And then a week later, for Bloomberg, it's like, you know.
That's fine.
It's an afternoon ad
But then a week later, on March 17th, I mean, you've got other big contests coming right after. You got Michigan, Washington. You've got, in that first 2 weeks of March, literally a $100 to $150 million day. You've got to come out. Joe Biden's been the leader all along. He's got to come out strong here.
Put your finger on one of the interesting things about these numbers that David's talked about is there are mirror images, Sanders and Biden. Sanders is doing very, very well among young people, not well among people over 65.
His age.
Yeah. He's not old enough for the old people. But Biden is doing very well with those older voters. They're doing equally well on the polls of the thing, but doing very poorly among young people, which is a key to why he's not doing well in online.
And the younger people are the ones who write money online. They'll give you $5 a month, and it comes back every single month.
So Bernie with young voters and first-time attendees of the caucuses.
Alexander,
it's important.
What do you make of, I mean, for Sanders, the enthusiasm, though, is something which it's hard to underestimate that. I mean, he can continue with these low volume donors. I mean, they're giving small amounts of money at a time.
I think in terms of electability, right, I think it's less about moderation, and this is bearing out. It's more about motivation, and we have to remember it's not just those Obama-Trump voters, but all the folks that sat at home in 2016, that sat at home in 2008 that didn't show up in 2016. That's young people, that's people of color, that's union households. And this election has to be about not just flipping those small amounts, talking to a tiny sliver, but the broader electorate.
say Sanders is starting to do better among Latino voters and African-American voters, much better than he did last go-around. I think this state is about 6% Latino, about 4% African-American. It's only a 10% slice, but it'll be interesting to see how he does with those voters. And then you sort of skip ahead to Nevada. A lot of Latino voters there. And
one of the things that we don't talk enough about is the importance of the labor vote and the union vote. And Sanders has run the table in terms of the unions, both in Iowa and elsewhere. And you're going to see, I think, that play out also in Nevada. I just think that Sanders is a phenomenon. He had a heart attack. He was. We had the violins out for him. Oh, it's so good to see him still able to walk out on stage after the heart attack. He is running ahead of the pack.
Let me just say, in Nevada, the culinary, which is by far the most they have not gone with
Biden has done. He has the firefighters. He's got some other unions. So it's not all.
We're nearing the top of the hour. I want to go back to Wolf.
Thank you very much. The caucuses have been underway now for almost an hour. We're about to start getting actual results. This will be very, very significant. Take a look. These caucuses, they're pretty full. There are about 1,600 of them around the state. Jeff Zeleny is at one at Drake University in Des Moines. So set the scene for us over there, Jeff.
Wolf, we are just moments away from the counting to begin. They have lined up in their order. You can see the precinct chair there at the front of the room. They're going to begin counting. We have learned that there are 400 people at this precinct caucus. That's about the exact same as 4 years ago. So not the big turnout that some of the campaigns were maybe hoping for. So to reach viability, you have to have 60 people out of the 400. So eyeballing it, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders clearly meet that threshold. Walk with me as we go to some of the other campaigns here. Andrew Yang might just be on the cusp of it here. Let's take a look at the size of his crowd. It is, certainly many students, many others here. We will see if they do reach viability. Interesting thing happening here, Wolf. This man in the black vest, he is a Joe Biden supporter. He has been having conversations with Amy Klobuchar supporters. Amy Klobuchar clearly is not going to be viable. You can look at the size of her crowd here. There are not 60 people in this line, but if they win people over during this period, they could potentially be viable. But this is what we are watching here, Wolf. Look at this Pete Buttigieg crowd right here. It is largely a mix of students, and of course, some of those are, have been Bernie Sanders' crowd, but there's also a mix of older voters as we go farther in there. So once we begin the counting here, this will be a key test for these three candidates, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Pete Buttigieg. There are 6 delegates in this precinct. It doesn't sound like a lot, but this is a delegate fight. This campaign is almost certainly to be a delegate fight from now until whenever the nominee is named, so this is a small part of that. So Wolf, the counting will begin momentarily here, and we'll see exactly who has the most.
That's very important. We'll see who's viable, who isn't viable. Thank you very much. Jason Carroll is in North Liberty for us. That's just outside Iowa City. What are you seeing where you are, Jason?
Well, the room has just broken up into groups. And why don't you take a look at the middle section of this auditorium, right up here, Wolf, where you see that middle section. Those are all Elizabeth Warren supporters. Just a few minutes ago, the precinct captain gave an announcement. He said, look, the viability number for this room, for this auditorium, is 89. So when you look across this room, you've got to meet that 89 number. And look, we can visually tell that the Warren folks definitely have met that number. Way over there in the corner there, those are the Bernie Sanders folks. I think a lot of folks were hoping for a bigger turnout visually than what we're seeing now. I mean, once again, consider University of Iowa is out here. I think a lot of people are expecting a lot of young folks to turn out. In that corner over there, you've got the Biden people who have just broken out into that corner. And then right here, we've got a mix. We've got Buttigieg people in this center section here, along with some, I'm told, some Amy Klobuchar folks. And we've got Amy Klobuchar over here as well. I was just asking over here, guys, do you think you have 89?
Yes, we do. I think they had out over 100.
Over 100? You just in a self-count, and you think you're there?
Somebody counted. I saw it on her phone.
I'm sorry.
It's going to be close. It's really close. 92.
92. You think you're there?
I think so, but barely. I'm counting you.
Okay, all right. Let's move over to some of the Buttigieg folks over here as well. Again, we've got Amy Klobuchar folks here, but I very quickly want to get over to some of the Pete Buttigieg folks because that looked like a lot of folks over here as well. Tell me about Buttigieg folks. How many folks do you think you have enough?
Yes, we definitely.
Has anyone done a count?
Informal count, we're definitely more than 89. So.
Definitely more than 89?
Yes.
You think you're there?
I think we've got it.
All right, so they look like they might be a viable group at 89 again. Very informal, group here. Again, these are the Warren folks, and I want to get over to here very quickly if I could. Hey, guys, I know you're the Elizabeth Warren. It looks like you've met that 89 threshold. You look like a pretty solid, pretty big group here.
Yeah,
absolutely.
we're excited.
You comfortable?
Very much so, yes.
Okay, so we're at the first round here. Let me hop down. We're at the first round. Again, things just getting underway here. Again, the total number of people in this room, Wolf, 591. The viability number that they've just announced is 89. So again, the viable groups that we're seeing here so far, we've got Elizabeth Warren looking really good over here. Bernie Sanders, tough to tell. It looks like they may have a little bit of a work ahead of them. Same thing with Biden over there in this corner. Buttigieg looking pretty solid, right? Buttigieg looking pretty solid. And then once again, over here, this final section, just going to check in with the Amy folks again. How are you feeling?
Feeling great.
Yeah.
It's
Okay. So, all right. So Amy Klobuchar, again, they're feeling like they might make that number, but you heard the woman over here. She says just barely. Wolf?
We'll see what the official numbers are. Jason Carroll is in North Liberty, Iowa. That's outside of Iowa City. David Chalian is looking once again at the entrance poll information that we're getting.
That's right, Wolf. We asked folks as they headed into the caucus sites today, did you support Hillary Clinton in 2016? Did you support Bernie Sanders, or did you not support either of them? Look at the breakup of tonight's electorate when compared to 2016. 56% of caucus attendees tonight say they supported Hillary Clinton. That's more than the percentage she got on caucus night in 2016. Bernie Sanders, only 30% of tonight's caucus goers in this entrance poll tell us they were Sanders supporter, and 14%, Wolf, say they supported neither. I want to do a deeper dive into those 14%. So if they didn't support Clinton and they didn't support Sanders, who do they find in tonight's contest attractive? Well, look at this. This is a Pete Buttigieg crowd largely. He gets 28% of those that were either with O'Malley in 16 or with nobody and they're new to the process. Amy Klobuchar gets 13%, as does Sanders, Biden at 12, Warren at 11. But you see, this is more a Pete Buttigieg crowd if they weren't with Sanders before. How about those first-time caucus goers? Remember I showed you a little bit ago, 35% of the electorate tonight tells us this is their very first caucus. This is their first time. That's a little smaller than we saw in 2016 and much smaller than we saw when Barack Obama won in 2008. I want to look at how those first-time caucus attendees are splitting among the candidates. Look at this. Bernie Sanders, whose strategy it was to get new caucus goers into his camp, he's winning with 29%. But again, Pete Buttigieg is competitive here. It's not Bernie Sanders running away with it. Pete Buttigieg at 22%. This is a largely young crowd, the caucus goers. I would say nearly half of first-time caucus goers are under 30 years old, according to the entrance poll. And you see that both Sanders and Buttigieg are the ones that are attractive to those that are new to this process, Wolf.
Very interesting, important entrance poll information. Let's go back to Brian Todd in Sioux City for us. You got some results, Brian?
We have some hard numbers for you, Wolf, here. The viable candidates here picked up some. Biden has a final score here of 26 votes, Buttigieg 27, Warren 34. They're still counting Sanders and Klobuchar. Now, what is crucial here is that look at this number. Look at the numbers for Biden and Buttigieg here, 23 each in the first round. That was the threshold for not being viable. Biden and Buttigieg were each one vote away from not being viable in this precinct. Biden picks up 3 votes between the first and second round. Buttigieg picks up 4. Warren picked up 4. They're counting Sanders and Klobuchar now. But this was a crucial number for Biden and Buttigieg. They came within a hair, Wolf, of not being viable for the second round. Would have been a pretty disappointing night for both of those campaigns if that had played out. But they were fortunate here, and then they were able to pick up a few more each here. We're still waiting for the Sanders and Klobuchar numbers, but look at Bernie Sanders showing right here. Very strong in the first round, and we're going to see if they were able to lure some voters over to their side for the second round. I'm going to jump off the stage here. So
all right, Brian, stand by.
I can come up here.
Yeah, hold on, Brian. I want to quickly go to Tom Foreman over in Grinnell College in Grinnell, Iowa. Looks like some horse trading going on over there.
Yeah, Wolf, I want you to notice what's going here. Come on, walk with me here. Right now, what has happened? Tell me about the different groups and what they've just done here.
So right now, Biden, Klobuchar, Steyer, and Yang were not viable. So we're walking over to the undecided group, hopefully to get that 15% number so we can get delegates. And if we get that 15% number, we can chop up the delegates. So whatever percentage of each group is here, we're going for 125 because that's the 15% mark. So we can send one Biden, one Klobuchar, one Yang to the county convention.
So you see what's happening here, Wolf, by making this maneuver, in effect, all these groups over here that were unviable, all those empty seats here, the only holdout down on the end there is the Pete Buttigieg group right now, which also is not viable. By combining over here as uncommitted, they are in effect denying the progressive wing over here, Sanders and Warren, from a complete victory on this. And listen, they're cheering for "Come on, Pete" here.
Come on, Pete! 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 Come on, Pete!
That's who they're aiming for. Remember, that's the Pete Buttigieg group over there. They're trying to get them to come over.
Come on, Pete! Come on, Pete!
They're working hard over there at Grinnell College. These are college students, by and large, and some academics. All right, we're going to have a lot more of the results of the Iowa caucuses right after this.